What if the past held secrets we were never meant to uncover? Across deserts, jungles, and forgotten ruins, whispers of civilizations long vanished emerge. Monuments carved with precision that defies known technology. Artifacts buried with purpose we cannot yet comprehend, and structures aligned to the stars with canny accuracy. Science scratches the surface, offering theories and timelines, yet some enigmas resist explanation, leaving us to wonder who built them and why. Tonight, we venture into the shadows of history to explore the archaeological mysteries that continue to baffle experts and ignite the imagination. Prepare to see the past not as a solved story, but as a riddle waiting to challenge everything we think we know. Along the rugged coastline of the Red Sea, where jagged cliffs meet the restless waves, there lies the faint trace of a city long swallowed by time. Here the air carries the salt of the sea and the echo of ships that once sailed to distant lands carrying incense, ivory, and exotic spices. This is Adulis, an ancient port whose name appears in the fragmented texts of Greek, Roman, and Ethiopian chronicles, yet whose precise grandeur remains largely a matter of conjecture. Walking among the scattered stones and low-lying ruins, one can almost hear the murmurs of bustling harbour. Merchants shouting over the creak of timbers, the clatter of cargo being unloaded, the rhythmic chant of sailors navigating unknown waters. Historical accounts suggest Adulis was a linchpin of trade between Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Mediterranean. Roman merchants recorded its wealth, describing goods that travelled thousands of miles across deserts and seas. Inscriptions discovered at archaeological sites hint at a sophisticated city-state, possibly governed under the Aksumite kingdom, its influence reaching far beyond the rocky shores where it once thrived. Yet, despite centuries of investigation, much about Adulis remains elusive. Maps of the ancient world mark its location, but few can agree on its true scale, its layout, or the depth of its influence. The very soil seems to guard its secrets. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of pottery, remnants of massive stone walls, and the foundations of buildings aligned with surprising precision. But the scarcity of inscriptions and written records leaves a yawning gap in our understanding. How could such a pivotal hub vanish so completely from the pages of history? Or was it abandoned, slowly consumed by erosion and neglect? Or did a single catastrophic event sweep it from memory? Some scholars point to earthquakes, shifting coastlines, or even the silting of its harbour as plausible explanations. Others speculate more shadowy possibilities: political collapse, piracy, or conflict with the rival states. Intriguingly, the artefacts that do survive raise as many questions as they answer. Greek and Roman coins, beads from India, and glassware from the Mediterranean have been found scattered across the ruins, hinting at a cosmopolitan trade network. Yet these discoveries are tantalizingly incomplete. There are no grand temples or elaborate monuments preserved, no archives to illuminate the daily life of its inhabitants. So could it be that the most remarkable structures were built from perishable materials lost to time and tide? Or might something more extraordinary be hidden just beneath the sand, waiting for the right hands or the right tools to uncover it? Modern technology offers glimpses of possibilities. Satellite imagery reveals faint patterns in the landscape, subtle irregularities in the terrain that suggest man-made structures long buried. Remote sensing and ground-penetrating radar have hinted at walls, streets, and perhaps even port facilities beneath the shifting sands. Yet the full extent of Adulis remains frustratingly out of reach. Each new discovery seems to illuminate a corner of the city, while simultaneously deepening the shadows over its history. What is it about Adulis that resists complete understanding? Perhaps it is the nature of history itself, delicate interplay between what is recorded, what survives, and what is lost forever. The port once connected continents, yet now its traces are ephemeral, hidden beneath layers of earth, obscured by centuries of human and natural activity. For every artifact unearthed, there are dozens more that vanish, either irretrievably destroyed or lying somnolently awaiting discovery. As the sun sets over the Red Sea, casting long golden reflections on the rippling water, one is left with a sense of quiet awe. Adulis endures not as a fully revealed city, but as a question, a testament to the ambitions and vulnerabilities of those who built it. The stones and scattered relics hint at stories we may never fully know, yet they invite us to imagine, to explore and to wonder. What mysteries remain buried beneath the sands? And what might the lost port of Andalusia still tell us about a world that, despite all our scholarship, continues to hold its secrets close? From the shores of this Red Sea, we journey eastward across oceans and centuries to another coastline where the traces of ancient trade whisper in the wind. Along the banks of the Sungai Batu River in northern Malaysia, dense mangroves frame the faint outlines of structures that hint at a civilization far older than many expected. Here, stone and brick foundations rise subtly from the earth, partially concealed by undergrowth, their weathered surfaces bearing witness to the passage of time and tide. The air is thick with humidity, the distant chatter of wildlife blending with the gentle ripple of water, and a stark contrast to the bustling port that must have once thrived in this very place. Archaeologists describe Sungai Batu as one of the earliest known centres of iron production and trade in Southeast Asia. Its origins possibly date back more than 2,000 years. Excavations reveal large furnaces, brick-built mounds, and channels that suggest a sophisticated network for transporting goods along the river. Evidence points to iron smelting at a scale previously thought improbable for this region, implying knowledge of metallurgy, an organisation that rivals other contemporary civilizations. Yet for all the scientific study and careful excavation, Sungai Batu continues to raise questions that modern frameworks struggle to answer. How did such an advanced industrial complex develop in this part of the world seemingly in isolation? And who were the people who built these structures and what drove them to harness the river and forge iron on such a scale? Unlike other ancient ports, Sungai Batu leaves little in the way of monumental inscriptions or detailed records. Its story is told almost entirely through fragments, charred remnants of furnaces, slag-strewn fields, and the careful arrangement of brick mounds whose purpose still eludes full understanding. Some suggest that the site functioned not only as an industrial hub, but also as a key trading post linking the Malay Peninsula with distant lands across the Indian Ocean. Yet even these interpretations only scratch the surface. Certain features defy easy explanation. The alignment of some structures hints at a deliberate architectural plan as if the builders followed an unseen blueprint. The radiocarbon dating indicates activity far earlier than most scholars once assumed for advanced metallurgy in the region. And while the evidence points to a thriving port and industrial centre, the absence of extensive artefacts associated with trade, coins, ceramics from distant lands, or elaborate docks remains perplexing. Could the full extent of Sungai Batu's network still lie buried beneath layers of earth and mud, waiting for technology or time to reveal it? Satellite surveys and drone imaging have begun to map the hidden contours of the site, uncovering linear patterns that suggest roads, water channels, and possibly even residential quarters. Yet these glimpses provoke more questions than answers. Was Sungai Batu part of a larger interconnected civilization whose traces have vanished under centuries of sediment and vegetation? Or does it represent a remarkable self-contained experiment in early industry and trade, one that flourished briefly before receding into obscurity? Walking among the low brick mounds, listening to the murmur of the river, one cannot help but sense a quiet persistence, the enduring footprint of human ingenuity slowly swallowed by nature. Sungai Batu invites us to reconsider what we know about early Southeast Asian history, challenging assumptions about where complex trade and industrial activity first emerged. And as the river winds its way to the sea, carrying whispers of iron and ash to distant shores, it leaves us with the enduring question: how much more of the past remains hidden here? And what secrets of human innovation have yet to surface from the mud and mangroves of Sungai Batu? From the humid mangroves and winding rivers of Southeast Asia, our journey returns to the arid, sun-baked landscapes of northeastern Africa. Along the west bank of the Nile, where the river narrows and rushes through jagged cliffs, lies a place of stone and shadow, Gabel el Sula. Here the cliff faces rise abruptly from the river, layered in sandstone starred with ochre and gold under the relentless Egyptian sun. The air hums with a quiet intensity, broken only by the distant lapping of water and the occasional whisper of wind threading through narrow canyons. It is a place that invites reflection as much as it provokes wonder, a corridor carved by nature yet indelibly shaped by human hands. Gabel el Sula was historically the source of some of Egypt's finest sandstone. For centuries, these cliffs provided the raw material for temples, tombs, and monuments along the Nile. Ancient inscriptions and rock reliefs etched into the faces of these stones testify to the labour of countless workers, the pride of local governors, and the reverence of pharaohs who understood the importance of this quarry to their architectural ambitions. Yet, as meticulous as these carvings are, many of them contain mysteries that defy simple explanation. Some depictions appear to record mundane administrative details, lists of shipments, workers' names, dates of transport, but others are enigmatic, portraying ritual scenes, unusual symbols, and Vagoyas whose identities and meanings are still debated by scholars. Walking along the narrow terraces carved into the cliffs, one is struck by the scale and precision of the work. Massive blocks of sandstone were extracted and lowered to the river, and often hundreds of feet from the site of the quarry. The methods used by ancient Egyptians to accomplish this feat are partially understood. Sledges, ramps, and ingenuity, but the consistency and precision of the cuts, the alignment of certain shrines, and the sheer effort involved continue to raise questions. Could there be aspects of their engineering lost to time? Were these quarries simply functional, or did they hold a deeper, perhaps spiritual significance that shaped the way they were excavated? Many of the shrines carved directly into the cliffs appear deliberately positioned to interact with the light of the sun at specific times of the year. Shadows fall across certain hieroglyphs in ways that seem intentional, highlighting particular figures or symbols. Some researchers propose these alignments were purely symbolic, yet meant to honor the gods or demonstrate the pharaoh's divine connection. Yet others wonder if there was knowledge embedded in these arrangements that transcends mere ritual, an astronomical, kintrical, or even mystical purpose now lost in the sands of history. Inscriptions hint at both religious devotion and logistical mastery. Names of kings including Amenhotep III and Seti I appear, alongside depictions of labourers hauling massive blocks and scribes recording quantities. But amid these familiar elements lie anomalies, figures that do not match conventional Egyptian iconography, symbols whose meanings remain undeciphered, and faint markings suggesting structures or pathways that have long since vanished. Were these remnants of forgotten rituals, obscure local deities, or simply a shorthand whose significance eludes modern interpretation? Gebel Layla is also notable for its unusual shrines, cut not just for stone extraction but seemingly for ceremonial purposes. Narrow passageways and small chambers are tucked into cliff faces. Their interiors are adorned with reliefs whose exact purpose is still debated. Were these shrines places of daily prayer for the quarry workers, small temples dedicated to local gods, or markers meant to sanctify the stones themselves before they were transported to distant cities? And why in some cases do these carvings appear incomplete, abandoned mid-project, as if interrupted by forces we cannot fully account for? Beyond the historical record, the site continues to provoke speculation. And some fringe theories suggest that the quarry's precision and scale hint at lost technologies or unknown methods of stone cutting. Others propose that the unusual alignments and obscure symbols indicate a deeper esoteric knowledge possessed by the builders. While mainstream archaeology emphasizes practical explanations, ritual practice, engineering ingenuity, and bureaucratic organization, the persistence of unanswered questions leaves room for wonder. Modern exploration of Gel El Silla increasingly combines traditional excavation with technology. Drones capture high-resolution images of cliff faces, while 3D modelling attempts to reconstruct how stones were quarried, transported, and installed. Even with these tools, however, much remains speculative. Hidden niches, faint carvings, and eroded inscriptions hint at layers of activity and intention that may never be fully reconstructed. Some sections of the cliff are inaccessible, their secrets locked away behind natural obstacles, leaving tantalizing possibilities for future discovery. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Gebel El Silla is its quiet persistence. A place where human ambition, labour, and reverence intersect with the natural rhythms of the Nile and the desert. The sandstone cliffs endure, weathered but unyielding, a testament to human ingenuity and the ephemeral nature of memory. Each inscription, each shrine is a fragment of a larger story. Yet the full narrative remains elusive. Why were some carvings left incomplete? What rituals were performed in these shrines that left no written record? And could the site still contain hidden chambers, inscriptions, or structures that might radically reshape our understanding of Egypt's past? As the sun dips low, casting long shadows along the cliffs and illuminating hieroglyphs in fleeting gold, one is struck by a profound sense of continuity and mystery. Gel El Silla is more than a quarry. It is a silent witness to centuries of ambition, devotion, and human ingenuity. Its stones speak across millennia, yet much of what they whisper remains undeciphered. The river flows on, indifferent to human passage, carrying the echoes of ancient labourers and the weight of questions that remain unanswered. What secrets lie hidden in these cliffs, waiting to be revealed? And how much of ancient Egypt's knowledge and artistry continues to elude us, concealed in plain sight within the shadows of Gel El Sula? From the sun-baked cliffs of Gel El Silsa, but where stone whispers of ancient Libya and ritual, we move across the Mediterranean to the rolling hills and hidden valleys of ancient Italy. Here lies a civilization that flourished in the shadow of Rome, yet whose influence would echo far beyond its time. The Etruscans, known for their artistry, urban planning, and enigmatic language, the Etruscans left traces of a culture at once brilliant and elusive. Among the most mysterious of these traces is a legendary object known only through ancient texts, the Etruscan Golden Book. Unlike a tomb or a temple, this artifact exists primarily in the realm of memory, its physical presence lost to time. Yet its reputation endures in historical accounts that have fascinated scholars and treasure hunters alike. Descriptions from Roman and later Greek writers depict the Golden Book as an object of extraordinary craftsmanship. Its pages, said to be made entirely of gold, were inscribed with characters of the Etruscan language, chronicling laws, religious rites, and perhaps even prophecies. Some accounts claim that it was preserved in the sanctuary of a powerful Etruscan city guarded with ritual precision, only to vanish during the rise of Rome. The very idea of a book, an object associated with knowledge and secrecy crafted in gold, suggests a culture that valued information as much as wealth. Yet here lies the central mystery. No verified examples of this book have ever been found. What survives are only tantalizing fragments of description scattered across texts, second-hand references, and the echoes of Etruscan reverence for the written word. Walking through the modern Italian countryside, one can almost imagine the secluded temples and hilltop cities where such an artifact might have been kept. The Etruscans, unlike their Roman successors, left few lengthy inscriptions, and their language, partially deciphered, continues to guard its deepest secrets. Could the Golden Book have contained not merely legal codes or religious rituals, but a broader cosmology, a guide to the universe as understood by a people whose sophistication rivaled that of Greece and Egypt? And if so, why would such knowledge vanish entirely from the historical record, leaving behind only whispers and speculation? Scholars have debated the nature and purpose of the Golden Book for centuries. Some suggest it may have been more symbolic than literal, an allegorical description of the Etruscans' wisdom encoded in ritual objects or sacred spaces. Others insist it was a tangible artifact lost through conquest or deliberate destruction, its disappearance part of the broader absorption of Etruscan cities into the growing Roman Republic. Supporting the idea of its material existence are tantalizing mentions of gold objects found in Etruscan tombs, thin sheets inscribed with obscure texts carefully folded and interred with the dead. Could these dreary treasures be fragments of the same tradition that produced the Golden Book? Or are they evidence of an entirely separate practice leaving the true book forever beyond reach? Equally mysterious is the suggestion that the Golden Book was not merely a repository of knowledge but a tool of power. And ancient sources hint that Etruscan kings consulted it in matters of governance, ritual timing, and diplomacy. Did the inscriptions encode practical instructions for leadership, or did they serve a more esoteric function, a key to understanding the cosmos or divining the will of the gods? The Roman authors who reference it often do so with awe, implying a combination of fear and respect, an object capable of shaping human destiny. If only one could read its pages. Yet the language in which it was written remains partially undeciphered, leaving the content and perhaps even the very format open to interpretation. In recent decades, archaeological work has revealed Etruscan settlements, temples, and necropolises with artifacts that hint at their sophistication. Elaborately carved bronze mirrors, painted tomb chambers, and inscriptions whose meaning teases modern researchers. These discoveries illuminate a culture capable of extraordinary artistry and organisation, lending plausibility to the existence of a singular precious text like the Golden Book. Still, none of these excavations has produced the object itself. Its absence continues to raise questions about how knowledge was stored and transmitted in the ancient world. Was the book deliberately hidden, to protect sacred knowledge, or destroyed to erase the Etruscan legacy in the wake of Roman expansion? The Golden Book also invites broader speculation about the interplay of myth and history. Might it have been a composite of oral traditions codified into a symbolic precious object? Could its description as golden refer as much to its cultural significance as to its material composition? Such questions blur the line between the tangible and the symbolic, challenging modern assumptions about what constitutes historical evidence. And in the quiet corners of Etruscan cities, where tombs lie beneath olive groves and hilltops, one can almost feel the lingering presence of a knowledge that sought permanence in metal and memory alike. As the sun sets over the rolling hills of Tuscany and Umbria, casting long shadows over tombs, temples, and forgotten roads, the Etruscan Golden Book remains a tantalizing enigma. It is at once a symbol of lost knowledge, a hint of a civilization's sophistication, and a question that endures. How much of the Etruscans' understanding of law, ritual, and the cosmos has vanished with it? Even today, as scholars pore over inscriptions and carefully excavate ancient cities, the Golden Book's existence is a reminder that history is never complete. Some truths remain hidden, not because they were forgotten, but because they were deliberately concealed, preserved only in fragments and memory. And so the mystery persists, inviting us to wonder what wisdom, what stories might still lie buried, waiting to be uncovered in the golden shadows of the Etruscan past. From the rolling hills and ancient tombs of Etruria, where the Golden Book remains an elusive testament to lost knowledge, our journey takes us eastward into the rugged landscapes of the Caucasus. Here in the heart of modern-day Georgia, the rocky slopes of the Mekvari River reveal a city carved directly into stone, Upal. Cliffs rise in jagged formations, their sun-baked surfaces pockmarked with tunnels, chambers, and stairways that descend into shadows older than any written record. The wind carries the faint scent of earth and stone, and the echoes of footsteps long past seem to linger in narrow passageways, as though the city itself remembers the lives that once animated it. Uplist Seeker, whose name translates to the Lord's Fortress, is a rock-hewn complex that dates back at least to the first millennium BCE, possibly earlier. Its structures, temples, dwellings, and communal spaces were carved from the living rock, a testament to the ingenuity and determination of its builders. Scholars trace its origins to a culture that thrived at the crossroads of civilizations influenced by Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and the broader Black Sea region. Yet despite extensive study, many aspects of Uplistiki remain enigmatic. Why was this city hunted so meticulously into the cliffs rather than constructed with conventional building materials? What drove its inhabitants to carve not just homes, but entire streets, meeting halls, and ritual chambers into solid rock? The city's layout is striking in its complexity. Narrow stairways connect terraces perched high above the river, while hidden passageways thread through the cliff, linking chambers that may have served religious, administrative, or residential purposes. Certain halls display intricate carvings and traces of painted decoration, hinting at ceremonial use or elite patronage. Yet much of the site is worn smooth by centuries of weather and human activity, erasing clues about its full appearance and function. Could there have been symbolic or astronomical significance to the orientation of the structures as with other ancient sites? And if so, what knowledge did the builders possess that guided their hands so precisely? Upliki's history is as layered as the rock itself. It became a significant urban centre during the early Iron Age, later serving as a hub for trade and political power in the region. The city persisted through centuries of upheaval, adapting to shifts in empire and culture. Roman, Persian, and Byzantine influences are detectable in the architecture and artifacts. Yet the core rock-hewn structures predate much of this interaction. This continuity raises questions. How did a city carved into stone maintain relevance and livability across millennia, surviving both natural erosion and human conflict? Among the most mysterious elements are the city's ritual space. Certain chambers contain evidence of fire pits, altars, and carved niches, suggesting practices that may have combined indigenous belief systems with imported religious ideas. Archaeologists have found remnants of animal sacrifice as well as objects whose purpose remains unclear. Were these spaces purely ceremonial, or did they serve dual functions as political or judicial centres? Some corridors are narrow and winding, almost labyrinthine, prompting speculation that they may have had a defensive purpose, or perhaps were intended to instill a sense of awe or mystery among participants. Technological questions also persist. How were such massive sections of stone removed and shaped with such precision given the tools available to early Iron Age societies? So the city's water management system is equally impressive, featuring channels carved into the rock to divert streams and collect rainwater. How much of this knowledge was empirical, learned through observation, and how much was guided by principles now lost to history? These practical feats, interwoven with ceremonial spaces, suggest a society that understood both the physical and symbolic dimensions of its environment. Upper Maliki's abandonment adds another layer of intrigue. By the medieval period, the city had largely ceased to be a major settlement. Yet the reasons remain unclear. Was it gradually depopulated due to political shifts, natural disasters, or resource scarcity? Or did the very nature of the rock-huge city, imposing and defensible, make it obsolete as social and economic networks evolved? And as with the Etruscan Golden Book or Gel el-Silsa, the physical evidence tells only part of the story, leaving the rest to speculation and careful interpretation. Walking through the silent corridors today, one senses a continuity of human ambition and adaptation. The city's stones retain a quiet dignity, speaking of the labour, artistry and vision of those who carved not merely buildings, but an entire urban landscape into living rock. The gaps in knowledge, the missing inscriptions, and the vanished details of daily life invite reflection. How did these people conceptualize their world, their Goa, and their place within it? What social, religious, or practical imperatives drove them to invest such immense effort into a city that exists as much as a monument to human ingenuity as a home? As the sun dips behind the cliffs, casting elongated shadows across terraces and stairways, a bliss spike exudes a profound sense of endurance and mystery. Its streets, empty yet resonant, invite us to ponder the intersection of practical necessity, ritual significance, and human creativity. What secrets remain hidden in its labyrinthine chambers waiting to be uncovered? And what does this rock city tell us about the capacity of ancient civilizations to adapt, to innovate, and to leave behind legacies that continue to inspire wonder thousands of years later? From the rugged stone-hundred city of Uplasiki, where human ingenuity carved entire civilizations into living rock, we journey across continents to the arid plains of southern Peru. Stretching beneath the desert sands in a landscape dominated by sweeping horizons and the haunting Nazar lines lie traces of a remarkable and largely hidden feat of engineering. The Nazar underground aqueducts are known locally as Puquios. Here in one of the driest regions on Earth, the land conceals a secret network of tunnels and wells, channels meticulously constructed to access and transport water in a place where rainfall is scarce and survival depends entirely on ingenuity. The first glimpse of a Puquio can be deceptively simple, a circular depression in the desert floor, rimmed by stone almost unremarkable from a distance. Yet each of these openings conceals the entrance to a subterranean channel, a conduit carved into the earth with gentle gradients that allow water to flow silently for kilos. And archaeologists estimate that these aqueducts date back at least 1,500 years, possibly earlier, representing a sophisticated adaptation to one of the harshest climates inhabited by human civilization. Walking among these circular entrances, feeling the dry wind and the sun-scorched soil beneath your feet, one is struck by the precision and scale of a system that remains functional even today. The construction of the Nazar Aqueduct presents questions that continue to intrigue scholars. How did ancient engineers calculate the precise angles required to maintain a continuous flow over such vast distances, often through hard-aired rock? How were these subterranean channels ventilated and maintained without modern tools or techniques? As some aqueducts run for kilos, connecting multiple wells and culminating in open channels that irrigate terraces and settlements, the coordination necessary to build and sustain such a system implies not only practical soil skill, but a sophisticated understanding of hydrology, mathematics, and community organization. The mystery deepens when one considers the lack of written records. Unlike civilizations that left behind detailed inscriptions or architectural plans, the Nazca people provide almost no textual explanation for their work. What motivated the construction of the Puquios beyond mere survival? Was water management purely practical, or did it carry ritual and symbolic significance as well? Some researchers have noted that the aqueducts appear to align with sacred geoglyphs and ceremonial centers in the surrounding desert. Could there have been a spiritual dimension to this hydraulic engineering? A belief that controlling water was intertwined with cosmic order or divine favor? Maintenance of the aqueducts also presents its own enigmas. vertical shafts punctuate the channels at regular intervals, allowing access for cleaning and inspection. Yet some of these shafts are remarkably deep, requiring knowledge of excavation and structural stability that seems extraordinary for the era. How did the builders anticipate the long-term durability of these tunnels in a shifting desert environment? What tools, techniques, or lost knowledge enabled them to avoid collapses and blockages that might have rendered the system useless? Even today, modern engineers study the Puccios for insights into sustainable water management. And the fact that portions remain functional underscores the extraordinary skill of their creators. There are also anomalies that challenge straightforward explanations. Certain aqueducts seem to converge in patterns whose purpose is unclear, creating networks that suggest a knowledge of hydraulics beyond mere practicality. Some channels terminate in locations that are now dry, leading to speculation about changes in groundwater levels, tectonic activity, or deliberate rerouting by ancient planners. Could these features indicate a level of foresight or environmental understanding that modern science has only begun to appreciate? Or were they part of ceremonial practices, perhaps designed to symbolize the control of life-giving forces hidden beneath the desert surface? So the Nazca aqueducts also raised questions about the broader society that created them. Coordinating construction, maintenance, and water distribution would have required organization, planning, and authority. Who oversaw such efforts? How were decisions made regarding which communities received access to water? And how were conflicts resolved? The sophistication of the Puccios suggests a society that was not only technologically adept but also socially complex, capable of long-term planning and resource management on a scale that challenges previous assumptions about pre-Columbian civilizations in this region. Walking among the desert depressions today, listening to the wind sweep across the sand and imagining the hidden channels flowing quietly beneath, one senses both awe and humility. The Puccios are more than functional infrastructure. They are a testament to human creativity, resilience, and the ability to adapt to seemingly inhospitable environments. They also serve as a reminder of how much of the past remains hidden, literally and figuratively beneath the surface, awaiting patient observation and discovery. As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the aid plain, the Nazca aqueducts appear both timeless and enigmatic. Their tunnels, carved with precision into unforgiving rock, continue to carry water and mystery alike. They invite us to wonder how much more of the ancient Nazca world remains buried beneath the desert sands. What insights about their understanding of nature, mathematics, and spirituality might be revealed if we could fully decode the intentions behind this remarkable subterranean network? And ultimately, how many other secrets of survival, ingenuity, and innovation lie hidden beneath landscapes we believe we know, waiting for discovery by those willing to look beneath the surface? From the hidden channels of the Nazca Desert, where water silently flows through ancient tunnels beneath the arid plains, we turn our attention northward to the volcanic landscapes of western Nicaragua. Here, near the shores of Lake Managua, lies a site both startling and enigmatic, the preserved footprints of a Cainca. Unlike the subterranean engineering of the Nazca, these marks are immediate, tangible, and deeply human. Yet they carry a sense of mystery that transcends ordinary understanding. Embedded in layers of hardened volcanic ash, the footprints stretch across the ground, frozen in time as if the moment of their creation had been sealed by catastrophe. Walking along the site, one notices their size, spacing, and clarity. Many are larger than average human footprints, some so elongated and wide that they suggest figures far taller than any known adult human of the era. The footprints appear to be moving in groups, aligned in directions that suggest deliberate travel. Yet the destination, purpose, and even the precise identity of those who left them remain unknown. Volcanic ash deposited by eruptions of nearby volcanoes thousands of years ago preserved these impressions with remarkable fidelity, allowing modern observers to study shapes, stride lengths, and even subtle details of toes and arches. Archaeologists date the footprints to around 6,000 years ago, placing them within a period of early human habitation in Central America, though conventional explanations suggest they were left by ordinary humans fleeing a volcanic eruption or walking across a soft ash-laden landscape. And yet the extraordinary size of many prints combined with their preservation and seemingly deliberate arrangement invites questions that challenge straightforward interpretation. How could such large footprints appear alongside more typical ones? Were these variations simply a result of natural factors, different ages, sexes, or distortion in the ash? Or could they hint at something more unusual, something that stretches our understanding of the past? The site itself enhances the sense of mystery. The footprints emerge from layers of hardened ash, extending over nearly 100 meters, forming paths that curve and intersect, suggesting movement across a landscape suddenly transformed by volcanic activity. Scientists have documented minute details, individual toes, pressure points of the heel, and impressions of walking sticks, but no other artifacts accompany them. No tools, pottery, or remnants of shelters that might explain the context of the journey. The prints exist in isolation, preserved in a silent testimony of a moment long vanished. Some researchers have proposed natural explanations for the unusual dimensions of certain prints. Variations in ash composition, water saturation, or post-depositional distortion could create impressions that appear larger than life. Yet even with these hypotheses, the regularity of certain footprints and their coherence with human anatomy remain striking. Could there be an element we are overlooking, a phenomenon not yet fully understood? Might these tracks record something extraordinary, human diversity, environmental extremes, or behaviours lost to the passage of millennia? Adding to the intrigue are occasional reports of local legend and oral history. Communities near Archaeological speak of giants, ancestors of extraordinary size, or beings who once walked the land long before the familiar stories of human settlement. While such accounts are anecdotal, they underscore the deep cultural resonance of the site. Across centuries, people have recognized these footprints as significant, as markers of events that demanded explanation and reverence. And in a place so geologically dynamic where volcanic activity, earthquakes, and shifting soils continuously reshape the land, the preservation of these impressions feels almost miraculous, as if nature itself conspired to capture a fleeting moment forever. The footprints also provoke questions about movement and behaviour. Many prints appear to travel in groups with spacing that suggests children, adults, and possibly elders moving together. Some paths converge while others diverge, hinting at social patterns or responses to environmental pressures. Did these travellers flee a volcanic eruption, seek water or food, or participate in ritual movement? And what of the extraordinary prints? Why do they appear alongside the smaller, more conventional footprints? Were they members of the same group, or does their presence point to an aspect of human or pre-human activity that remains hidden in the archaeological record? Modern preservation efforts allow visitors and researchers to experience these ancient impressions up close, yet the sense of mystery endures. Walking along the pathways, observing the subtle depth of each print, one is reminded of the fragility of time and the power of sudden events to imprint upon the earth. The footprints serve as both record and question, a tangible connection to people or beings who moved across this landscape thousands of years ago, leaving traces that defy complete explanation. As the Nicaraguan sun casts long shadows across the hardened ash, the footprints of Archaeological seem to stretch endlessly into the past. They invite us to consider the human, or perhaps more than human stories embedded in the earth. Who were these travellers, and what circumstances brought them together in this precise moment? Why do some footprints appear larger than expected, challenging our understanding of human history? And how many other events captured briefly in soil, ash, or stone remain buried, waiting for discovery beyond the reach of time, yet pressing silently upon the present? The site, in its quiet resonance, embodies both certainty and uncertainty. It is a physical testament to a moment that actually happened, yet it resists interpretation, preserving questions as vividly as the impressions themselves. Standing there observing the paths carved into hardened ash, one cannot help but wonder what other mysteries of human or possibly extraordinary existence have been frozen in earth and rock, waiting for those patient enough to notice, measure, and imagine. Archaeological offers no answers, only footprints, and in them the enduring presence of the unknown. From the ash-laden footprints of Archaeological, that where human or perhaps more than human traces are frozen in time, our journey moves across continents once again to the rugged landscapes of Central Asia. In the fertile Zaravshan River Valley of modern-day Tajikistan lies the site of Sarzum, one of the earliest known settlements in this region. A city whose architectural remains hint at a sophistication that challenges conventional timelines, spread across gentle terraces overlooking the river. Sarzum is a place where stone foundations, walls, and fortifications whisper of a civilization that thrived nearly 5 millennia ago, yet whose full story remains tantalizingly incomplete. Approaching Sarzum, the first impression is one of scale and meticulous design. Low stone walls zigzag across terraces, enclosing courtyards and public spaces. The circular and rectangular foundations reveal a city planned with care. Its structures are arranged in patterns that suggest not just habitation, but social organisation and possibly ritual significance. Even after thousands of years, the stones retain a sense of deliberate placement, as if each wall, each corner had been positioned with both function and meaning in mind. Walking among these ruins, one senses the pulse of a community whose ambitions and achievements are partially visible, yet largely veiled by the passage of time. Archaeologists date Sarism to around 3 to 2500 BCE, placing it within the Halithic period, an era of emerging metallurgy, trade networks, and early urban planning. Excavations reveal evidence of stone and mud brick buildings, workshops, and communal spaces, along with tools, ceramics, and other artifacts that suggest long-distance trade. Copper and bronze objects indicate a mastery of early metalwork, while the city's layout implies knowledge of urban design and social coordination. Yet despite these discoveries, many questions linger. How did such a settlement achieve this level of organisation in a region that, until recently, was thought to have hosted only small, scattered communities? What principles guided the placement of streets, dwellings, and public spaces? And what was the role of ritual or governance in shaping them? Sarism's architecture also hints at symbolic and possibly ceremonial purposes. Certain structures, particularly large circular enclosures, suggest areas dedicated to communal or religious activities. Some archaeologists speculate that these spaces were used for ritual gatherings, and possibly linked to seasonal cycles or agricultural practices. Others point to the orientation of certain buildings, noting alignments with celestial bodies or the river itself. Could these alignments have guided ceremonies or signalled a deeper understanding of astronomy embedded in the very fabric of the city? And if so, what knowledge now lost might these structures once have communicated? The artifacts and structural remains further complicate our understanding. Tools and ceramics indicate daily life and production, yet some items appear far more sophisticated than expected for this period and location. Certain decorative motifs echo designs found thousands of kilos away, suggesting contact with distant cultures. Was Sarism a hub of trade connecting Central Asia with the broader ancient world? Or were these similarities coincidental, and arising independently in a society capable of remarkable innovation? Equally puzzling are the defensive features of the city. Thick walls, bastions, and elevated terraces indicate awareness of external threats. Yet there is little evidence of large-scale conflict. Were these constructions precautionary, or did they serve additional symbolic or ceremonial purposes? The coexistence of everyday dwellings with monumental architecture suggests a community that valued both practicality and display. Yet the motivations behind these choices remain largely speculative. Technological questions also arise. How were stone walls so precisely constructed without advanced tools? How did inhabitants balance urban planning with environmental constraints, ensuring access to water, arable land, and protection from seasonal floods? The layout of Sarism suggests an integrated approach, blending practical engineering with social and possibly religious priorities. And yet, as impressive as the surviving structures are, they provide only a partial view of what the city might have looked like at its peak. What other building, roads, or communal spaces have been lost beneath centuries of soil, erosion, and human activity? Sarism also challenges our understanding of early human-home networks. Evidence of trade in metals, stones, and decorative objects indicates connections stretching across Central Asia. Yet the mechanisms of such long-distance exchange are not fully understood. How did people transport heavy materials across rugged terrain? What social or political structures facilitated these exchanges? And how did these interactions shape the development of Sarism itself, allowing it to emerge as a thriving settlement in a region that would otherwise seem isolated? Standing among the remnants of Sarism today, one cannot escape the sense of continuity and enigma. The city's stones, partially worn by millennia, still convey a story of human ambition, ingenuity, and adaptation to the environment. Yet the full narrative remains elusive, obscured by time and the limits of the archaeological record. How did the people of Sarism conceive of their city, their social order, and their connection to the wider world? What rituals, knowledge, or technologies have been lost entirely, leaving only faint traces in stone foundations and scattered artifacts? As the sun sinks over the Zirasan Valley, casting long shadows across terraces and walls. Sarasum exudes both presence and mystery. Its architectural remains invite reflection on the capacity of early humans to shape their environment with precision and intention. They challenge us to reconsider what we know about urbanization, trade, and social complexity in the ancient world. And above all, they leave us with questions that endure. What else lies hidden beneath the soil, waiting to reveal the full story of this remarkable settlement? How much more of Sarasum's knowledge, ingenuity, and culture remains buried, silent, yet waiting for discovery? From the sun-baked terraces and stone walls of Sarasum, where early urban planners shaped civilizations along the Zarafshan River, we move across continents and millennia to the arid expanses of the Sahara Desert. In the Nigerian landscape of Goro, vast dunes stretch across the horizon, their soft ridges shifting endlessly under the wind. Beneath these sands lie one of the most remarkable and enigmatic archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. The Goro skeletons, human remains preserved in an ancient lakeside cemetery, offer a haunting glimpse into societies that thrived thousands of years ago, yet vanished almost without a trace. At first glance, the desert appears timeless and empty, a place where life seems impossible. But careful excavation reveals a different story. Over 200 graves have been unearthed containing skeletons ranging in age from infants to the elderly. These remains, some of which are extraordinarily well preserved, offer clues to the physical characteristics, health, and lifestyles of people who once inhabited this now barren landscape. The radiocarbon dating places these populations between 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, a period of dramatic environmental change when the Sahara was not a desert, but a mosaic of savanna, lakes, and rivers. Walking among these burial sites, one feels the weight of time and the silence of a civilization suspended between existence and disappearance. The gopher skeletons are remarkable not only for their preservation, but for the diversity they reveal. Researchers have identified at least 2 distinct populations buried at different times, separated by centuries. Differences in cranial shape, stature, and burial practices suggest shifting populations or cultural influences, perhaps reflecting migration patterns, adaptation to environmental changes, or encounters with distant communities. Some skeletons were buried in extended positions, and arms crossed or placed deliberately, while others rested in flexed postures accompanied by pottery, ornaments, or animal remains. What determined these differences, and what do they tell us about social structures, beliefs, or rituals in this ancient landscape? The site also raises questions about the interaction between humans and their environment. The lakes and wetlands that once sustained these communities disappeared as the Sahara dried, leaving behind the dunes and arid plains seen today. How did these people adapt to such dramatic ecological changes? Did the shifting climate drive migration, cultural transformation, or the eventual abandonment of the region? The physical evidence offers tantalizing clues but no complete answers. In some graves, isotopic analysis of bones suggests diets rich in aquatic resources and indicating a reliance on lakes and rivers, while others reveal shifts in nutrition over time, hinting at periods of scarcity or social change. Equally mysterious are the artifacts found alongside the skeletons. Beads, decorated pottery, and tools suggest connections to broader Saharan and sub-Saharan cultures. Yet they also hint at traditions unique to Goro itself. Some burials include items whose functional symbolic meaning remains obscure, leaving researchers to speculate about ritual practices, social hierarchy, or cosmological beliefs. Were these objects offerings, status markers, or protective charms intended for the afterlife? And why do certain graves exhibit extraordinary care in placement and adornment while others are comparatively simple? The physical characteristics of the skeletons themselves add another layer of intrigue, and many individuals display features considered unusual for the region, including differences in stature, cranial morphology, and even bone robustness, which challenge conventional narratives about population continuity in the Sahara. Could these differences indicate distinct migratory waves, isolated populations, or adaptations to specific environmental conditions? And if so, how did these groups interact, trade, or share whole knowledge given the vast and changing landscapes around them? Perhaps most haunting is the sense of disappearance that surrounds Goro. These people thrived in a lush, habitable environment, only to see their world transform dramatically as the Sahara dried. What became of them? Did they migrate, assimilate into other emerging cultures, or vanish entirely from the archaeological record. Yet the silence between these graves speaks as loudly as the bones themselves, reminding us that even in the presence of extraordinary evidence, much of history remains obscured, written only in fragments of human remains and scattered artifacts. Visiting the site today, one is struck by the juxtaposition of permanence and impermanence. The dunes shift with the wind, erasing footprints and traces of activity, while the skeletons beneath remain frozen in time. Silent witnesses to human life, adaptation and resilience, each grave, each artifact, each careful excavation uncovers a piece of a story that is never fully complete, leaving a lingering sense of wonder and uncertainty. The Goro skeletons compel reflection on the resilience and fragility of human societies. They illustrate the intimate connection between people and environment, or the ways in which cultures adapt or fail to adapt to profound ecological changes. Yet they also challenge assumptions about migration, diversity, and the spread of technology in prehistoric Africa. How many stories of survival, innovation, and adaptation lie hidden beneath sands yet untouched? How many other communities once thrived in landscapes now desolate, leaving only faint traces for modern researchers to interpret? As the sun dips behind the Saharan dunes, casting long shadows across the sand and illuminating the burial mounds, Gobero exudes a quiet, haunting presence. The skeletons speak not only of life and death, but of human curiosity, endurance, and the enduring mysteries of our past. What remains buried, waiting to reveal its secrets? And what can these ancient people teach us about resilience, adaptation, and the fragility of civilizations in the face of a changing world? Go in its silence and preservation continues to pose questions as compelling today as they were 5,000 years ago. From the silent graves of Goro, where human lives are etched into the sands of a long-vanished Sahara, we now journey across continents and into the remote mountains of China. On the slopes of Mount Bong near the edge of the Saline Lake, a series of enigmatic structures pierce the landscape, the Bong pipes. At first glance, they appear deceptively ordinary, rust-cooled tubes emerging from rocks and soil. But closer inspection reveals a phenomenon both puzzling and extraordinary. Some pipes stretch tens of meters, branching underground and connecting with openings in nearby rock faces, their purpose, age, and origin defying simple explanation. The pipe's physical characteristics are striking. They vary in diameter from a few centimeters to several decimeters, often forming triangular arrangements, while some protrude from the mountainside in clusters that resemble a primitive plumbing network. Inside the pipes, mineralized deposits have fused their surfaces over millennia, giving them an appearance of antiquity. Though the exact timeline remains contested, radiocarbon dating of nearby formations has produced inconsistent results, suggesting a complex geological or possibly artificial history. As the wind sweeps across the desolate mountain slopes, the pipes stand in stark contrast to the natural surroundings. Both integrated and yet undeniably anomalous, mainstream scientific interpretations tend to favour geological explanations. Some researchers propose that the pipes are natural formations, the result of iron-rich minerals crystallising within sedimentary rock and later exposed by erosion. Others suggest volcanic activity may have shaped the hollow structures, leaving them looking uncannily like man-made conduits. Yet despite these hypotheses, several factors resist easy explanation. The uniformity in shape, the alignment of some pipes, and the apparent branching networks underground resemble systems designed for transport, drainage, or irrigation, challenging the idea that they are purely natural. Adding to the enigma is the presence of metallic residues within the pipes. Analyses have revealed high concentrations of iron and silicon, sometimes accompanied by traces of other metals such as calcium and magnesium. But could these compositions be entirely the result of natural mineralization, or do they suggest human or even unknown intervention? The site's proximity to other archaeological findings, including stone tools and ancient dwellings, raises further questions. Were the bygone pipes employed or modified by early civilizations? Or were they encountered, utilized, or perhaps venerated by people who did not fully understand their origin? The pipes themselves connect to the broader landscape in ways that evoke speculation. Some penetrate the rock and extend into Lake Tosen, disappearing beneath its waters. Others are embedded deep within the mountains, their length and internal configuration difficult to trace. Could they have served as conduits for water, for mineral extraction, or for some unknown industrial purpose? Or is it possible that these structures were never functional at all, instead forming part of a ritual landscape, a symbol whose meaning has been lost over millennia? Local lore adds another layer to the mystery. Villagers recount stories of strange sounds emanating from the pipes, of sudden drafts and resonances within the hollow tubes, and even of unusual magnetic properties affecting compasses in the vicinity. While anecdotal, such reports highlight the long-standing fascination and unease inspired by these formations. They are simultaneously mundane and uncanny, clearly part of the Earth, yet unmistakably out of place in both form and function. Scientific scrutiny has intensified in recent decades, employing modern techniques such as 3D mapping, chemical analysis, and radiometric dating, and each investigation seems to raise as many questions as it answers. Why do the pipes appear so systematically arranged? How could natural processes produce the regularity and uniformity seen in their diameters and junctions? And perhaps most provocatively, why does the underground network suggest a level of planning that implies foresight and intention? Even geologists and archaeologists who attempt to offer conventional explanations concede that the bygone pipes resist straightforward categorization. The pipe's mysterious character is amplified by the environment itself. Mount Bong is harsh and remote, a place of jagged peaks, sparse vegetation, and sweeping winds that seem to sweep away the ordinary while leaving the extraordinary exposed. The pipes, partially buried, partially eroded, seem like veins within the mountain, of frozen remnants of an unknown process waiting for discovery. Each new excavation, each measurement only deepens the sense of enigma. What began as an apparent curiosity has become a challenge to understand the interactions of nature, human history, and perhaps phenomena not yet fully recognized. Standing beside the rust-curled openings, tracing the lines of the pipes with one's gaze, one cannot help but sense the persistence of mystery. They speak to the passage of time, to forces both natural and human that have shaped the landscape, yet they leave unanswered questions that echo across centuries. Were they the work of ancient civilizations experimenting with metallurgy or hydraulics? Or are they purely natural for remarkable only in the uncanny ways they mimic human engineering? And beyond these possibilities, could there exist explanations that we have yet to conceive, hidden in layers of rock and memory, waiting for the right insight or the right technology to reveal them? The Bygone pipes remain a monument to the unknown. They challenge assumptions about history, technology, and the capabilities of both nature and humanity. Like the Goober skeletons, they are at once tangible and mysterious, inviting contemplation and study while resisting definitive answers. They compel us to consider the possibility that not all evidence of the past fits neatly into established narratives. And as the wind sweeps across Mount Bong, stirring dust and rust-cold fragments, the pipes silently ask the questions that draw us onward. What is truly buried beneath the earth? What knowledge, natural or human, lies hidden in these mountains, waiting for discovery? And how much of our understanding of the past is shaped not by what we find, but by the mysteries we cannot yet solve? Rising from the sun-baked plains of modern-day Iraq, the ziggurat of Dur Kurgalzu stands like a stone sentinel of a bygone era. Its terrace layers reach toward the sky in a silent, commanding presence. Even in its ruined state, there is an undeniable grandeur to the structure. The coarse, sun-bleached bricks seem to whisper stories of kings and priests of ceremonies performed in devotion to gods whose names have survived millennia. The air here carries a subtle weight, as though the earth itself remembers the footsteps of those who once ascended its steep receding steps. Duragalu, established around 1400 BC ECE by King Kurgalzu I of the Kassite dynasty, was more than a city. It was a statement of power, a spiritual hub, and perhaps a testament to the architectural ambitions of one of Mesopotamia's most enigmatic civilizations. The ziggurat, a massive mud brick platform, would have once soared above the surrounding cityscape, a visible emblem of divine authority connecting heaven and earth. Archaeologists have painstakingly measured its dimensions. Approximately 70 meters on each side, and once nearly 60 meters in height, it would have dominated the horizon. Its uppermost temple possibly serves as the earthly dwelling of a god. Walking through the ruins today, it is difficult to imagine the precise scale and ritual significance the ziggurat held. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt, which were tombs shrouded in secrecy, Mesopotamian ziggurats were active centers of worship. The approach to the summit would have been a deliberate journey, and each terrace climbed a symbolic ascent toward the divine. And yet, for all the evidence that modern archaeology has uncovered, brick inscriptions, remnants of temples, traces of ceremonial pathways, so much about the ziggurat remains frustratingly opaque. What exactly occurred at the top of those layered steps? Which rituals, what prayers, and what celestial observations might have taken place there? Some scholars suggest the ziggurat was aligned with astronomical events. Its orientation, like that of many Mesopotamian temples, may have corresponded to solstices, or the rising of key stars. Could the ziggurat have served as an observatory, a sacred observatory, where priests charted the movements of Venus, Jupiter, or the mysterious wandering paths of other celestial bodies? The evidence is fragmentary, but the possibility opens the imagination to a world where religion, science, and power were inseparably intertwined. Yet even beyond the well-documented functions, the ziggurat of Dur Kuragaldzu harbours subtle anomalies. In some excavated areas, archaeologists have discovered unusually precise brickwork that seems advanced for the period. Could this reflect lost engineering knowledge? Or perhaps techniques borrowed from other distant civilizations? Certain terraces contain cavities and chambers whose original purposes remain speculative. Storage, ritual, or something else entirely. Some of these internal spaces have yielded artifacts that defy easy categorization. Small objects whose function, symbolism, or significance remain a matter of debate. And then there are the whispers of local legend. An ancient Mesopotamian text of fragmentary and cryptic, yet some mention the ziggurat as a locus of divine presence, a place where heaven and earth might briefly overlap. Could the structure have had a function that modern science struggles to define? Some researchers have proposed that sound, resonance, or even electromagnetic phenomena may have played a role in ritual practices. Though these ideas remain speculative, they hint at a layer of experience, one of perception, of sound, of energy that might have been as important to the ancients as the visual grandeur of the structure itself. The question of construction also continues to fascinate. How did the Classites manage such monumental buildings with limited technology? Mud brick, while abundant and easily moulded, is inherently fragile, and layers upon layers had to be carefully engineered to prevent collapse. And yet the ziggurat endured centuries resisting floods, earthquakes, and the relentless erosion of time. Some suggest that the building techniques encoded knowledge now lost, a sophisticated understanding of structural physics embedded in bricks and mud. Was there a hidden wisdom behind the shape, the proportions, or the placement of each terrace? Or was it, as mainstream archaeology proposes, the product of patient trial and error, guided by the practical experience of generations of builders? Adding to the mystery are the carvings and inscriptions that survive, faint traces on bricks and stones that hint at both the divine and the mundane. They speak of gods, kings, and the cosmic order, but they also leave tantalizing gaps, words eroded by time, or symbols whose meaning may forever be lost. Could these gaps conceal something more profound than a simple historical record? Some fringe theories have suggested that ziggurats like Dur Kuragaldzu were more than temples. They were repositories of hidden knowledge, perhaps even encoded maps of the heavens or instructions for technologies now forgotten. While such ideas remain speculative, they underscore an unsettling truth. Despite decades of excavation and study, the ziggurat continues to defy full comprehension. Even the surrounding landscape seems to participate in the mystery. The city of Dur Kuragaldzu, once bustling with markets, dwellings, and temples, has been largely reclaimed by desert sands and modern development. The ziggurat now rises in relative isolation, and a solitary monument to a civilization that has disappeared almost entirely. And yet standing at its base, it is easy to feel the presence of the past pressing back, a reminder that the ancients who built it were humans, yet humans who glimpsed something beyond the ordinary, something that compelled them to shape earth and clay into such enduring forms. Perhaps the most intriguing element of all is the silence. Modern visitors can walk its terraces, touch the worn bricks, and look across the plains, imagining the city as it once was. But the ziggurat speaks in riddles, offering fragments of truth, while withholding the full story. It prompts questions that may never be answered. What exactly did the Kassites hope to achieve by building so high so carefully? Were their intentions purely religious? Or did they encode knowledge now irretrievably lost? And is there hidden in the layers of mud, brick, and earth evidence of practices and understandings that challenge our assumptions about ancient civilization? As the wind sweeps across the plateau, stirring dust along the ancient terraces, one cannot help but wonder how much of human history, knowledge, and ambition has been lost to time, and how much is quietly preserved, waiting for those patient enough to uncover it. The ziggurat of Dur Kuragaldsu endures not merely as a ruin, but as a monument to mystery itself, reminding us that some of the greatest stories of our past may never be fully told, and that the line between history and enigma often blurs where the ancient world still lingers in stone, from the dense greenery of Brazil's Amazonian rainforest. The Monte Alegre rock shelters emerge almost as if by secret design, hidden alcoves carved into cliffs of ancient sandstone. Their facades were painted by time and weather. Their interiors whisper with shadows of a distant past. The first glimpse of the site is arresting. Jagged cliffs rise above the surrounding forest. Their surfaces are etched with curves, hollows, and depressions that have captured the imagination of archaeologists for decades. Moss clings to the stones. Vines trail down into dark crevices, and the air is thick with the earthy scent of damp leaves. It is a place where the present feels almost suspended, where the echoes of millennia seem to linger in the stillness of the air. The Monte Alegre shelters are not cup or grand in scale like the ziggurats of Mesopotamia or the pyramids of Egypt. Yet their significance lies not in monumental architecture, but in the intimate traces left by early human inhabitants. Here in these narrow recesses and shallow caves, archaeologists have uncovered an astonishing array of prehistoric art. The walls are adorned with thousands of pictographs, delicate spirals, geometric patterns, handprints, and representations of animals. Some images appear as simple sketches, others as intricate compositions painted in vivid reds, blacks, and yellows using natural pigments extracted from minerals, plants, and charcoal. Dating of these works suggests they could be as old as 11,000 years, placing them among the earliest known examples of human artistic expression in the Americas. The Monte Alegre shelters thus provide a tantalizing window into the minds of prehistoric peoples, their creativity, and perhaps their beliefs. But the more researchers study these paintings, the more questions arise. What did these symbols mean to those who painted them? Were they religious in nature, storytelling tools, or records of environmental observations? Some designs, complex geometric arrangements, and repeated motifs hint at a symbolic language that has since vanished. Could they represent a form of communication lost to time, a code we are only beginning to glimpse? Even the placement of the paintings invites curiosity. Many are located deep within the shelters, far from natural light, suggesting deliberate intent. Reaching them would have required torches or other means to illuminate the walls. This raises another question. What compelled these early artists to venture into the shadows? Was it ritual, artistic devotion, or a practical reason now lost to us? Beyond the walls, the archaeological record adds another layer of intrigue. Excavations have revealed tools, pottery fragments, and evidence of ancient hearths, yet some artifacts do not neatly fit the timeline or expected technological capabilities of the era. Certain implements are unusually sophisticated, suggesting knowledge of techniques that seem advanced for the period. Could these anomalies indicate cultural exchange with distant groups, or perhaps innovations that simply disappeared with the passage of time? The natural environment of Monte Alegre itself adds to the mystery. The cliffs are part of a complex geological formation. Their rocks are carved by millennia of erosion and weathering, and some formations bear natural depressions and patterns that almost mimic the human-made designs inside the shelters. Did early humans see these natural shapes as spiritually significant, integrating them into their artwork and rituals? Could the interplay of natural and human-made markings hold symbolic more meaning, or even represent an early form of landscape-based cosmology? Local folklore and indigenous traditions add yet another layer to the story. Generations of people in the region have long revered the cliffs as sacred spaces. Oral histories speak of spirits, guardians, and messages embedded in the stones. While such accounts cannot be verified in the conventional archaeological sense, they invite reflection on how the past and present interact. But could these shelters have been centres not only of survival but also of spiritual or cosmic significance? Some fringe theories extend even further, proposing that the paintings may reflect astronomical knowledge. Certain spiral motifs and geometric arrangements have been interpreted by researchers as potential representations of star clusters, planetary movements, or seasonal cycles. While these interpretations remain speculative, they suggest that Monte Alegre may have been more than a canvas. It could have been a repository of knowledge encoding observations of the natural world in a symbolic language now lost to time. Walking through the shelters today, it is impossible not to feel a quiet awe. The walls seem alive not with the literal presence of their creators, but with the echo of their intentions, their curiosity, and their need to leave a mark upon the world. Every brushstroke, every handprint, every abstract swirl is a whisper across the centuries, inviting us to question the limits of what we know about human history. And yet, for all the work of archaeologists, for all the meticulous analysis and careful cataloguing, Monte Alegre remains fundamentally enigmatic. Some areas of the shelters have yet to be fully explored. Hidden crevices and chambers that could hold paintings or artifacts still unknown. The possibility exists that entire chapters of prehistoric life are waiting quietly behind walls of stone, waiting for the patient eye to uncover them. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Monte Alegre is the very uncertainty it preserves. We can measure the pigments, date the charcoal, map the caves, and analyse the tools, but the meaning of the images, the why behind their creation, remains elusive. Did the people who painted these walls intend to communicate across generations, across time itself? Were they recording events, observing the cosmos, invoking spiritual power, or doing something else entirely? The answers are not definitive, and perhaps they never will be. As sunlight filters through the canopy and illuminates the textured walls, the shelters invite a rare kind of reflection. Here is a place where human creativity, ritual, and mystery converge. A reminder that even in the most remote corners of the world, our ancestors left traces that defy simple explanation. And Monte Alegre challenges us to reconsider what we know about early civilization in the Americas, and more profoundly to accept that some mysteries of human history may remain forever just beyond our grasp. Standing among the painted walls, one cannot help but wonder how much of human understanding, expression, and belief has been lost to time, and how much still lies hidden, quietly waiting for discovery in the shadows of these ancient cliffs. As the lush forests of southern Costa Rica stretch toward the Pacific, scattered across open plains and river terraces, lie objects that seem almost incongruous in their precision and mystery, the D-stone spheres. At first glance, they appear deceptively simple. Perfectly rounded stone, some small enough to hold in one hand. They are so massive that moving them without modern machinery seems impossible. Yet there is a quiet, enigmatic presence to these spheres, as though they have been patiently waiting for millennia to be understood. Sunlight glances off their smooth surfaces, highlighting subtle variations in texture and colour, and in the shadowed spaces between them, one senses the weight of a forgotten past. The spheres are the work of the Desi culture flourishing between approximately 500 CE and 1500 CE in what is now Costa Rica. Made primarily from granadierite, gabbro, and other igneous stones, these spheres vary in size from just a few centimetres to more than 2 metres in diameter. Archaeologists estimate that hundreds of these spheres once existed, scattered throughout ceremonial centres, plazas, and burial sites. Yet despite the extensive research, the purpose of the spheres remains a matter of debate, their meaning elusive. Some scholars argue that the spheres were symbolic markers of social status or territorial boundaries, a visible sign of wealth or authority. Others suggest they may have had astronomical significance, potentially aligned with solstices, equinoxes, or celestial events. The meticulous craftsmanship suggests careful planning and knowledge of geometry far beyond what might be expected from pre-Columbian cultures in this region. How did the D manage to carve, transport, and position these heavy stones with such precision? Could they have had a system of pulleys, levers, or rollers now lost to history? Or was there an understanding of physics and balance that we are only beginning to grasp? But what makes the DI spheres particularly compelling is their remarkable symmetry. Many of the larger stones are nearly perfect spheres, their surfaces so smooth that they appear to have been turned on a lathe. Yet these were created without metal tools capable of such precision. Even tiny imperfections seem deliberate, suggesting a deliberate attention to form and proportion. Why go to such lengths for objects that appear at first glance to serve no practical function? Was the perfection itself imbued with meaning, a spiritual or cosmological ideal? The sphere's placement within the landscape also invites reflection. They are often found in groups aligned along natural or man-made pathways, sometimes in relation to rivers, hills, or ceremonial centres. As some researchers have speculated that these arrangements may reflect a sophisticated understanding of the surrounding environment, perhaps marking sacred spaces social hierarchies, or even star charts etched onto the Earth itself. Yet, despite the plausibility of these interpretations, no definitive explanation has emerged. Each theory illuminates part of the picture, but leaves significant gaps, encouraging us to consider possibilities beyond the conventional. Transporting the stones adds another layer of mystery. Some spheres weigh several tons, yet there is no clear evidence of the roads or mechanisms used to move them. Did the Deers employ ingenious methods now forgotten? Perhaps rolling the stones on logs, sliding them along prepared tracks, or leveraging the natural contours of the land. Or were there techniques that combine both practical skill and an intuitive understanding of balance, friction, and leveraged knowledge that vanished along with the culture that created them? Over the years, various theories have ventured further into the speculative. Some researchers have proposed that the spheres served as ritual objects, vessels for spiritual energy, or even markers for communication with the cosmos. Others have suggested more esoteric interpretations, hinting at lost technologies or knowledge encoded in the stone's geometry and arrangement. While mainstream archaeology approaches these ideas with caution, the unanswered questions surrounding the sphere's precision and purpose invite curiosity, encouraging us to wonder what the Decks may have known that we do not. Local legend and oral history add yet another layer of intrigue. Some stories speak of the spheres as sacred objects imbued with protective power, or as markers for hidden treasures and ancient secrets. While these accounts cannot be verified, they suggest that even long after the decline of the decay culture, the stones retained a presence in the collective memory of the region, a resonance that hints at meaning beyond mere ornamentation. Time, however, has not been gentle. Many spheres have been displaced, broken, or removed. Their contexts were disrupted by agriculture, construction, or looting. Even so, the ones that remain continue to hold their silent authority. Standing among them, it is difficult not to feel a sense of reverence, a quiet recognition that these stones are more than geological curiosities. They are enduring witnesses to a civilization that possessed vision, skill, and perhaps an understanding of the world that challenges our assumptions. The spheres also raise philosophical questions about human ambition and the desire to leave a mark on the Earth. Across continents and millennia, cultures have sought to create objects that endure to shape raw materials into forms that speak across time. Yet the DIS spheres stand apart in part because of the combination of their perfection, their scale, and their mysterious context. What drove this ancient culture to invest so much labour and knowledge into objects whose function remains obscure? Was it devotion, power, ritual, or a quest for understanding that transcends our comprehension? Even as we analyse their dimensions, study their locations, and compare them with other megalithic traditions around the world, the spheres retain their enigmatic quality. They are not just objects to be catalogued. They are questions in stone inviting us to consider the limits of our knowledge and the ingenuity of those who came before. How much of their meaning has been lost, and how much is deliberately hidden, awaiting rediscovery in the alignment of a landscape, the curve of a surface, or the spaces between stones? As the sun sets over the plains of southern Costa Rica, casting long shadows across the remaining spheres, it is easy to feel the tension between certainty and mystery. The dewy stone spheres endure not merely as archaeological artifacts, but as enduring symbols of a past that continues to elude explanation. They remind us that for every answer uncovered by science, there are deeper, subtler questions that persist. Questions that invite reflection, imagination, and wonder. In the end, the spheres of Deus remain a silent challenge to our understanding. What knowledge, beliefs, or intentions did these ancient people encode in stone? And what secrets of human history continue to lie waiting, hidden, among the plains and forests of Costa Rica? High in the northern reaches of Italy, where jagged mountain peaks rise above verdant valleys, lies a landscape that seems to hum with echoes of the distant past. The Val Camonica Valley stretches for miles. Its slopes are dotted with boulders, cliff faces, and rock outcrops that carry the silent impressions of human hands from thousands of years ago. At first glance, the carvings etched into the stone appear deceptively simple. Stick figures, hunting animals, the swirling spirals, abstract geometric forms. But as one gazes longer, the intricacy of the work emerges. These are not mere decorations. They are messages carefully inscribed by generations of people whose world we can only begin to imagine. Valcamonica is recognized today as one of the largest and most significant repositories of prehistoric rock art in the world. Archaeologists have catalogued more than 140,000 petroglyphs across the valley, dating from the Neolithic period through the Iron Age, a span of over 8,000 years. Such continuity suggests a cultural practice sustained across countless generations, one that carried both meaning and purpose. The sheer scale of this endeavour is staggering. How did these early peoples, using simple stone tools carved with such consistency and care, leaving a record so enduring that we can still trace the lines today? The imagery is remarkably diverse. Anthropomorphic figures appear wielding weapons, performing dances, or carrying objects that may have held ceremonial significance. Animals, both real and fantastical, dot the stone surfaces, often depicted in motion, hunting, or in mysterious alignment with human figures. Geometric shapes, spirals, and labyrinthine designs recur throughout the valley, sometimes arranged in ways that suggest a deliberate pattern or rhythm. Could these abstract forms represent a symbolic language, a method of communication now lost? Were they maps of the natural world, records of spiritual belief, or tools for teaching and memory? Some carvings are found in locations that are physically challenging to access, high up on cliffs or in narrow crevices. Why would the creators invest the effort to reach these spots? Were they intended to be seen by only a select few, initiated into a sacred knowledge, or were they offerings to the unseen forces of the mountains? The positioning of the symbols suggests a deep engagement with the landscape itself, as if the terrain and the carvings are part of a single integrated vision of the world. The valley's natural contours, the flow of rivers, and the shifting light of the seasons may have all been considered in the placement of each image. Archaeologists have proposed a range of explanations. Many believe the carvings document daily life and social structures, hunting scenes, agricultural activities, and ritual practices. Others see them as expressions of cosmology or spirituality, perhaps even an early attempt at a symbolic or prioritizing system. That the repetition of certain motifs over centuries points to shared traditions, suggesting that the images held enduring significance passed down through generations. Yet despite careful study, the full meaning of the carvings continues to elude researchers. There is an ineffable quality to the images, a sense that they encode ideas and knowledge we are only beginning to comprehend. Beyond conventional interpretations, some scholars have ventured into more speculative territory. Certain spirals and geometric patterns have been proposed to align with astronomical events, perhaps marking solstices, equinoxes, or cycles of the moon. Could the carvings have functioned as a form of celestial calendar, a record of the cosmos etched in stone? Others have suggested that the abstract shapes might reflect concepts of fertility, life cycles, or spiritual journeys, ideas deeply embedded in the cultural imagination of these early communities. While such interpretations remain open to debate, they highlight the enduring mystery of Valcamonica, a place where art, ritual, and knowledge may intersect in ways we cannot fully reconstruct. The tools and methods used to create the petroglyphs reveal both ingenuity and patience. Early artists employed stone hammers and chisels to resize the rock, a painstaking process that required skill and endurance. The precision of many carvings, particularly those with geometric symmetry, is striking. How did these early peoples achieve such consistency? And why were they driven to devote so much labour to works whose meaning we now struggle to decode? Was the act of creation itself a ritual, and a means of connecting with forces beyond the visible world, or a way of asserting identity and memory within the community? Local folklore and oral traditions add another layer to the story. Generations of valley inhabitants have regarded the carved rocks with reverence, attributing them to spirits, ancestors, or divine forces. These stories cannot be verified in the archaeological record. Yet they hint at continuity of meaning, a recognition that the carvings were more than practical images. They were vessels of cultural significance. Could the valley itself have been considered sacred, a space where human and supernatural realms intertwined, and where the carvings served as a bridge between the two? Even as scholars continue to study the rock art with advanced technologies, 3D mapping, digital imaging, pigment analysis, new questions arise. Some carvings are layered atop older ones, suggesting a dialogue across generations, a conscious layering of meaning and memory. Others are partially eroded, leaving tantalizing fragments that provoke speculation about what once was. Are we glimpsing only a fragment of a larger narrative, or a carefully curated record meant to convey selective knowledge? The incompleteness of the evidence is itself a reminder of the vast temporal distance between the present and the creators of these symbols. Standing in the shadow of these ancient carvings, one is struck by the quiet persistence of mystery. The petroglyphs endure, weathered but eloquent, offering glimpses into human creativity, belief and memory. They invite us to wonder about the lives, thoughts and imaginations of people long gone, to consider how they perceived the world and how they sought to leave a mark upon it. For all our study and interpretation, Valcamonica resists full comprehension, preserving an ambiguity that challenges modern assumptions about history and culture. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the valley is its invitation to reflection. We can measure, catalogue and analyse, but the ultimate meaning of the carvings may never be fully revealed. Were these images records, prayers, maps or symbols of knowledge that transcended the practical world? Did they serve a spiritual function, or were they expressions of identity, community and memory? And how much of the story has been lost, swallowed by time with the weather and the silence of centuries? As sunlight shifts across the valley and casts fleeting shadows upon the etched rocks, but one cannot help but feel the tension between what is known and what remains hidden. The Valcamana rock symbols endure as silent witnesses, bridging millennia and reminding us that human history is rarely fully illuminated. Some questions may never find answers, and yet the carvings continue to speak quietly, persistently, enigmatically, inviting us to ponder the worlds they once inhabited and the knowledge, beliefs, and mysteries they still conceal. In the end, the valley challenges us to wonder how much of our human story, our understanding of culture and consciousness, remains hidden in the grooves of stone, waiting for those patient enough to notice, to interpret, and to imagine the lives of those who came long before us. Perched atop the rolling plains of Minorca, the Torre Senegal rises from the earth like a silent sentinel of the distant past. From a distance, the site appears almost modest, a cluster of stone towers and circular enclosures scattered across a rugged landscape of low hills and sun-bleached rock. Yet, as one draws closer, the scale and complexity of the settlement begin to reveal themselves. Massive stones carefully shaped and stacked form towering talus. Megalithic structures whose purpose and origins remain subjects of enduring debate. The sun casts long shadows across the ancient walls, illuminating the precise geometry of the towers, while the wind whispers across the terraces, carrying echoes of lives lived millennia ago. Torre d'Engalmes, the largest known Atlantic settlement on Minorca, was first constructed around 1000 BCEE and remained in use for several centuries. And its name, derived from the Catalan word taliote, refers to the cylindrical stone towers that dominate the site, rising like watchful eyes over the surrounding landscape. Some towers reach over 6 meters in height, built from carefully stacked stones without mortar, their weight balanced with remarkable precision. Archaeologists have identified over 20 tall-outs in the settlement, interconnected by a network of stone pathways and enclosures and circular dwellings. Walking through the ruins, one is struck not only by their scale, but by the meticulous organisation of the settlement, a sophisticated urban plan that seems to anticipate the needs of both defence and community life. The function of the Talbots has long been a subject of scholarly inquiry. Some propose that they were defensive structures, watchtowers meant to protect the community from rivals or invaders. Others suggest they served ritual purposes, spaces for ceremonies, gatherings, or astronomical observation. Evidence from the site hints at multiple roles. Human burials have been discovered within some towers, while the alignment of others suggests an awareness of celestial patterns. Could these structures have been simultaneously practical, ceremonial, and symbolic, a tangible expression of a culture deeply attuned to both land and sky? The precision of construction raises further questions. The stones used to build the talus are immense, some weighing several tons, yet they were shaped and arranged without the use of metal tools. How did the Atlantic people manage such feats with limited technology? Did they develop methods of levering, rolling, and shaping that have since been lost? Or was there a deeper understanding of balance, weight distribution and geometry encoded in their techniques? The towers themselves seem to resist the erosive effects of centuries, a testament to both human ingenuity and the careful selection of materials and placement. Archaeological studies have revealed a complex settlement pattern. Circular dwellings, communal spaces, and specialized enclosures suggest a society that was both hierarchical and cooperative. Artifacts such as pottery, tools and ornaments indicate daily life and trade. Yet many discoveries defy easy categorization. Some stone carvings and structural features appear to serve purposes that remain mysterious, hinting at rituals, symbolic functions, or knowledge now lost to time. Were these features purely functional, or did they encode cosmological understanding, social hierarchy, or spiritual beliefs? One of the most intriguing aspects of Torre Dengame is the alignment and placement of certain structures in relation to the landscape. Some tall-outs are positioned to maximize views of distant hills, valleys, or the coastline, suggesting strategic planning. Others may align with solstices, equinoxes, or other celestial events, implying a sophisticated observation of the sky. Could the settlement have served as both a living space and a monumental calendar, where the passage of time was measured not only by sun and season, but by the careful arrangement of stone and shadow? Speculative theories extend beyond practical or ceremonial function, as some researchers have proposed that the Talbots were centres of ritual energy, spaces where human activity and natural forces intersected in ways that modern science cannot fully measure. Others suggest the possibility of symbolic mapping. The towers, enclosures and pathways might represent a deliberate reflection of the surrounding landscape, or even of cosmological patterns encoded in stone for generations to interpret. While such ideas remain conjectural, they underscore the enduring mystery of the site and the creativity of the Taliotic culture. Local tradition and folklore have preserved echoes of the Talos' significance. Stories speak of the towers as sacred places inhabited by spirits or ancestors, and that their presence continues to inspire awe among visitors and scholars alike. These oral accounts cannot provide definitive explanations, but they remind us that the human experience of Toroidal extends beyond measurable artifacts. It encompasses memory, imagination, and a sense of wonder that has endured for millennia. Even in modern analysis, new questions arise. Certain talents appear to have been modified or expanded over time, suggesting evolving purposes or changing social structures. Archaeologists note evidence of multiple construction phases, implying that the settlement adapted to shifting political, environmental, or spiritual needs. How did these changes reflect the priorities and knowledge of the Taliotic people? Did the towers themselves guide the social and ritual life of the community, or were they monuments to ideals, power, protection, and connection to the cosmos? The scale and the endurance of Torre Dengame invites reflection on human ambition and the desire to leave a mark upon the landscape. These stones, shaped and positioned with care, resist not only the passage of time but also the boundaries of our understanding. They challenge assumptions about prehistoric societies, prompting us to consider how knowledge, spirituality, and daily life might have been interwoven in ways that leave traces both subtle and profound. As sunlight shifts across the uneven stones, illuminating terraces and casting shadows across circular enclosures, the settlement seems almost alive. The Talat stand as silent witnesses to a world we cannot fully reconstruct. Their presence is a reminder that human ingenuity often leaves traces that defy simple explanation. For all that archaeology has revealed, the artifacts, as the structures, the settlement patterns, much about to deal remains hidden. What secrets of daily life, ritual, and belief lie buried in the stones? How much of the Atlantic worldview, their understanding of landscape and sky and social order, remains encoded in the placement and construction of these towers? And how many mysteries of their knowledge lost to time await discovery? Or will they remain as enduring enigmas, as silent as the stones themselves? Torre Dengame invites us to pause, to observe, and to wonder. Its Atlanta walls and enclosures are more than ruins. They are a dialogue across millennia, speaking of human ambition, creativity, and the desire to connect with forces larger than ourselves. The site challenges our perception of prehistoric societies, offering a glimpse into a world where the practical, the ceremonial, and the mysterious converged. And as we trace the lines of stones and shadows, one cannot help but ask what still lies hidden, quietly waiting within these ancient structures, waiting to reveal a knowledge that has been lost for thousands of years. High in the remote reaches of the Indian Himalayas, where jagged peaks pierce the sky and glaciers spill silently down rocky slopes, lies a frozen body of water known to locals as Rupkund. On first sight, it is deceptively serene, a small glacial lake surrounded by snow-streaked cliffs, shimmering quietly under the midday sun. Yet beneath its placid surface and scattered along its periphery rests a chilling secret. Hundreds of human skeletons partially buried in ice and rock, there remains a stark testament to a tragedy long lost to time. Known to the outside world as Skeleton Lake, Rupkund has captivated explorers, scientists and the curious alike, offering a haunting glimpse into the mysteries of the past. The skeletons themselves present an extraordinary puzzle. Estimates suggest that over 300 human remains are visible at the site, though the exact number is difficult to determine given the shifting snow and occasional landslides. The bones vary in age, sex and size, hinting at the presence of multiple individuals, yet the conditions of their deaths are anything but ordinary. Archaeological analysis reveals injuries consistent with trauma, fractured skulls, broken limbs, and wounds that suggest blows from a blunt object. Many of the skeletons are scattered across the rocky lake bed, their positions frozen in time, as though a single cataclysmic event struck suddenly and without warning. For decades, the scholars have debated the origins of the Rupkund remains. Radiocarbon dating and isotopic analysis indicate that the individuals did not all perish at the same time. Some skeletons date back to the 9th century, while others appear to be from the 19th century. This temporal spread has fueled speculation. Was upon the site of repeated disasters, a place where travellers met untimely ends over centuries? Or is there a more enigmatic explanation waiting beneath the ice? The environment itself offers both clues and challenges. Rupkund sits at an elevation exceeding 5,000 metres where harsh weather, freezing temperatures and sudden snowstorms are the norm. Travellers navigating the high-altitude passes would have faced formidable obstacles. Yet the presence of so many skeletons in a single location suggests more than mere accidents. Were these individuals pilgrims, merchants, or perhaps part of organisers' caravans venturing across the mountains under perilous conditions? Historical accounts suggest that the lake lies along an ancient trade and pilgrimage route, a path to sacred shrines further into the Himalayas. Could the frozen remains reflect a single event or multiple misfortunes layered upon one another across centuries? What makes Rupkund particularly haunting is the uniformity of some injuries. Many skulls display concussive damage consistent with high-velocity impacts, as though a force struck from above. Some researchers have suggested that hailstones of unprecedented size could have caused these wounds, a natural phenomenon consistent with the local climate. Others note the possibility of violent human conflict, a sudden attack, or even ritualized execution. And each theory carries weight, yet none fully accounts for the presence of multiple groups, the timing discrepancies, and the distribution of remains. Recent genetic studies have added yet another dimension to the mystery. Analysis of DNA recovered from the bones indicates at least two distinct populations, one group of local Himalayan ancestry and another from a more distant, possibly southern Indian lineage. This discovery raises profound questions about travel, migration, and cultural interactions in the ancient world. Why were such desperate groups travelling together or along the same perilous route? What drew them to this remote and unforgiving landscape only to meet such a grim fate? Speculative interpretations abound. Some fringe theories propose that Rupkund may have been the site of a ritual or pilgrimage gone awry, perhaps tied to the region's complex spiritual traditions. Others suggest cosmic or environmental forces, unusually severe storms, avalanches, or even rare meteorological events as the agents of death. While mainstream science leans toward natural explanations, the sheer drama of the scene frozen in the high-altitude cold invites reflection on human vulnerability and the unpredictable power of nature. The landscape itself reinforces the sense of awe and terror. Steep cliffs rise around the lake, their faces pockmarked with ice and loose stone, and the water itself, once partially thawed, now mirrors the surrounding peaks in perfect stillness. Seasonal snow melt reveals the skeletons in patches, only for them to be again concealed beneath ice and debris as the winter returns. But the cyclical emergence and disappearance of the remains almost transforms the lake into a stage, where the distant past performs its silent frozen drama year after year. Local folklore has long preserved the story of Rupkund. Villagers speak of the lake as cursed or haunted, a place where travellers vanish or meet sudden death. Legends describe sudden storms, hail, or divine wrath as instruments of fate, warning those who would venture too far into the mountains. While such accounts cannot be verified scientifically, they reveal a deep cultural memory of danger and mystery, echoing the uncertainty that surrounds the site. Could these oral histories passed down over centuries preserve fragments of the actual events, or are they symbolic expressions of the mountain's inherent peril? Even with modern investigation, many questions remain. And how did the individual survive long enough to reach this particular location, only to succumb to an event so sudden and fatal? Why do the remains cluster where they do rather than being scattered across the wider pass? And most hauntingly, what does the presence of multiple populations imply about ancient mobility, pilgrimage, and the interaction of distant communities in such a forbidding environment? Standing on the icy shores of Rupkund today, the air is thin, the wind cold, and the silence absolute. The bones visible amidst rocks and ice are a stark reminder of the fragility of human life in the face of nature's unpredictability. Yet they are also a testament to human courage, curiosity, and the drive to traverse the unknown. Each skeleton tells a story that science can only partially reconstruct. A narrative of travel, risk, an unforeseen catastrophe that spans centuries. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Rupkund is its persistence. With each thaw, the lake reveals more of its hidden past, only to conceal it again beneath ice and stone. The remains are simultaneously tangible and elusive, a frozen dialogue between the living and the dead, nature and humanity. They invite us to reflect not only on the conditions of death, but on the motivations of life. What drives humans to venture into the highest, coldest, and most dangerous places, risking everything in pursuit of trade, pilgrimage, or exploration? And so, Rupkund remains a place of unanswered questions. The frozen skeletons challenge our assumptions about ancient travel, survival, and human interaction. They remind us that the mountains, though majestic, are indifferent to human ambition, and that even the most prepared traveller can be swept into catastrophe. For all our scientific tools, advanced genetics, and climate modelling, the lake guards its secrets jealously, leaving us to wonder about the lives, choices, and fates of those who perished on these icy slopes. As the sun sets behind the peaks, casting long shadows over the frozen water, one cannot help but feel a mixture of reverence and unease. Rupkund Skeleton Lake endures as both a grave and a mystery, a place where human history and natural force converge in ways that science can approach but never fully explain. How many stories remain buried beneath the ice, waiting to be revealed? And what does this remote silent lake tell us about the fragility, courage, and enduring mystery of the human experience in the face of a world we cannot control? Hidden beneath the rugged landscapes of Sardinia, amidst rolling hills and rocky outcrops, lie structures that have quietly guarded their secrets for thousands of years. These are the hypogeia, subterranean burial chambers hunted directly from the island's native limestone and sandstone. Their entrances are often inconspicuous, hidden in plain sight or masked by earth and vegetation. Standing at the threshold, one is struck by a sense of solemnity, as though the stones themselves exhale the weight of centuries. Entering the chambers is to step into a world deliberately cut off from the sky, a world of shadow and echo, where the past seems to linger in every carved corridor. The term hypogum comes from the Greek for underground, yet these structures are far more than mere tombs. Sardinia is home to hundreds of hypogeae. Constructed primarily during the Bronze Age by the Nuragic civilization, a society whose monumental stone towers, the nuragi, still dot the island's landscape. The hypogeae, in contrast, are hidden. Intimate spaces accessed by narrow stairways descending into carefully planned chambers. Some are simple, while others are complex, with multiple rooms, central halls and carved niches, each designed with astonishing precision. The walls are often adorned with intricate engravings, spirals, geometric patterns, and symbolic motifs whose meaning continues to elude modern understanding. Scholars have long debated the purpose of the hypogeia. Conventional archaeology identifies them as burial sites, repositories for the dead of high status or collective groups within the neurotic society. Human remains, often accompanied by pottery, tools, and ornaments, confirm that the chamber served functions. Yet the scale, craftsmanship and orientation of many hypogeae suggest an intent that extends beyond mere interment. Certain corridors are aligned along precise axes, sometimes oriented to solstices or other celestial events. Could these underground spaces have functioned simultaneously as sacred places, astronomical observatories or ritual centres, connecting the living with the cosmos as much as with the departed? The construction of these hypogeae remains remarkable. Carved entirely by hand using rudimentary tools, the chambers required extraordinary skill, labour and knowledge of stone stability. Some hypogenes feature corbelled ceilings, arches and stepped corridors reflecting advanced architectural techniques. That the consistency and symmetry of many interiors suggests that their builders possess not only technical expertise, but also a sophisticated understanding of proportion, acoustics, and spatial symbolism. How such knowledge was acquired, preserved, and transmitted across generations is a question that continues to intrigue researchers. Inside the hypoxia, the atmosphere is heavy with mystery. Narrow corridors lead to circular chambers, often with niches and recesses precisely cut into the walls. The engravings are subtle yet deliberate spirals, concentric circles, stylized animals, and abstract symbols that appear both artistic and codified. Some motifs are repeated across multiple hypogee, hinting at a shared symbolic language or cosmological system. Could these carvings represent a spiritual map, a guide for the soul's journey, or a repository of secret knowledge? The precision with which they are executed, combined with the inaccessibility of the chambers, suggests intentionality and purpose beyond mere decoration. Speculation extends to the use of sound and light within these chambers. Certain hypogea are designed so that the slightest footstep echoes through corridors and halls, amplifying the presence of those who enter. Others may have been oriented to capture light in a specific way at certain times of the year, illuminating carvings or central features in a precise sequence. Was this a ritualistic tool, a method to guide ceremonies, or a symbolic enactment of celestial cycles underground? Could the hypogeel have served as stages for ritual observances where architecture, light, and sound converge to create experiences designed to connect the living with the spiritual world? The contents of the hypogaia deepen the enigma. Excavations have uncovered skeletal remains displaying both careful placement and evidence of ritualized treatment, as if the act of burial itself held ceremonial significance. Accompanying artifacts, ceramics, beads, bronze implements suggest a society with complex social structures and religious practices. Yet some chambers contain items whose function is obscure or unexpected, and in certain cases the arrangement of bones and objects seems deliberate in ways that defy simple interpretation. Were these purely, or did they encode information, belief systems, or knowledge intended for the initiated? Beyond their physical features, then the hypogeel evokes broader questions about the neurotic civilization itself. Despite their monumental stone towers and sophisticated metallurgy, the Neuragic people left no written records, leaving modern observers to interpret culture, belief, and ritual purely through material remains. The hypogaia in this context are not just tombs. They are messages carved in stone, fragments of a worldview that can only be partially reconstructed. Could these underground chambers represent a deliberate effort to preserve knowledge, cosmology, or spiritual practice beyond the reach of casual observation, ensuring that only those initiated into certain mysteries could access their secrets? Speculative theories extend even further. Some suggest that the hypogee were centers of esoteric knowledge, places where astronomical observation, ritual, and then perhaps even early science converged. Others propose connections between the patterns carved into the walls and distant megalithic traditions in the Mediterranean, hinting at the possibility of cultural exchange or shared symbolic systems. While such interpretations remain conjectural, they underscore a profound reality. The hypogaia continues to challenge assumptions about Bronze Age societies, reminding us that technological sophistication, spiritual life, and symbolic thought were deeply intertwined. The isolation and inaccessibility of the hypoxia contribute to their aura of mystery. Many chambers are found on steep hillsides concealed by overgrowth or boulders, accessible only via narrow paths or stairways carved into rock. Seasonal changes, erosion, and human activity have altered some sites. Yet others remain remarkably preserved, offering windows into a world that once lay at the intersection of the living, the dead, and the cosmos. Walking through these spaces today, the quiet is almost palpable, broken only by the faint echo of footsteps or the distant sound of wind. It is a place that commands reflection, humility, and wonder. Even after decades of archaeological research, the hypogaia refused to yield all their secrets. What exactly did the neurotic people intend with the precise alignments, repeated motifs, and carefully constructed spaces? Were the chambers primarily, or did they serve multiple roles in spiritual, astronomical, and social contexts? And what knowledge lost through time and the absence of written records remains encoded in the stone walls waiting to be interpreted by those patient enough to observe, measure, and imagine. Standing in the dim light of a hypogee, tracing the spirals carved into the limestone, one feels a connection across millennia. The chambers are at once intimate and monumental, silent yet eloquent. They evoke the complexity of human belief, the ingenuity of architectural vision, and the enduring desire to leave a mark upon the world. Yet as much as they reveal, they conceal just as much. Every carving, corridor, and chamber is a question, a challenge to modern understanding, and an invitation to contemplate the unknown. Perhaps the most profound aspect of hypoxia is their persistence. Time has eroded their surfaces, yet their structure endures. Generations of people have walked past them without fully grasping their purpose, yet their presence remains commanding. They remind us that human history is layered, though complex and often partially obscured, and that even the most carefully crafted monuments cannot fully preserve meaning across millennia. As light filters through narrow entrances and shadows stretch along carved walls, the Hypoia of Sardinia continues to speak across the ages. They challenge us to consider what it means to record knowledge, to honour the dead, and to construct spaces that connect human experience with the cosmos. They remain both tangible and enigmatic, offering glimpses of a civilization that continues to resist full comprehension. And so the Hypoia invites reflection. How much of human history, belief, and knowledge lies hidden beneath the surface, deliberately encoded in stone, waiting for the observant and the curious to uncover it? How much remains just out of reach, silently guarding the mysteries of a people whose voices, though absent from written record, still echo in the shadowed corridors of their subterranean monuments? High atop a remote ridge in the northern Peruvian Andes, shrouded in mist and steep slopes, sits Cuap, the enigmatic fortress of the Chachapoa, a civilization often called the Warriors of the Clouds. From a distance, the site appears almost ethereal, a massive stone silhouette rising from the fog, its walls extending in a formidable ellipse that seems both monumental and inaccessible. The first sight of Quavo inspires a mixture of awe and apprehension. Here, nature and human ambition converge, creating a landscape that seems at once real and otherworldly, as though the mountains themselves conspired to conceal secrets long held sacred. Quail is an architectural marvel. Constructed between the 6th and 10th centuries CE, the fortress sprawls across a mountaintop plateau some 3,000 metres above sea level. Its outer walls, some as high as 20 metres, are made of finely cut and fitted stone enclosing more than 400 circular structures. These buildings, arranged in what appears to be a carefully planned urban complex, feature stonework that is both functional and decorative. Many of the walls are adorned with sculpted friezes of jaguars, serpents, and geometric patterns, motifs that evoke both the natural world and symbolic meanings that remain elusive to modern observers. The scale and precision of Quailap suggest an advanced understanding of construction and urban planning. Stone terraces stabilise the mountain slopes, channels and stairways manage water flow, and the layout of circular dwellings hints at social hierarchies or communal organisation. Scholars propose that Cuop served multiple purposes: a fortress to defend against invaders, a ceremonial centre for the Chachapoa elite, and perhaps even an astronomical observatory with specific alignments to solar and lunar events. Yet despite extensive study, the full intentions of its builders remain opaque. Why place such a monumental settlement atop a steep isolated ridge, difficult to access and exposed to harsh weather? Was it purely defensive, or did the location hold spiritual or cosmological significance as well? The Chachapoa culture itself is enigmatic. Unlike the Inca, whose legacy dominates much of Andean history, the Chachapoa left no written records. What we know of them comes from their stonework, burial practices, and accounts recorded by Spanish chroniclers centuries later. Guapo, as their most impressive surviving site, offers a glimpse into a society that was both sophisticated and isolated, capable of monumental architecture, complex social organisation, and intricate symbolic expression. Yet the absence of textual records leaves modern researchers reliant on observation, inference, and at times conjecture. How much of Quaop's design reflects practical necessity, and how much encodes belief systems or knowledge that has been lost to time? The fortress's circular structures themselves are striking. Each building is roughly uniform in shape, with walls that curve inwards slightly, creating a sense of enclosure and focus. Many entrances are deliberately narrow, which could have defensive advantages, but may also reflect ritual considerations. Inside, the interiors are compact, often featuring low stone benches or niches whose purposes remain uncertain. Were these spaces purely domestic, or did they serve ceremonial or symbolic functions as well? Archaeologists continue to debate the meaning of the decorative friezes, particularly the stylized depictions of animals. Were these representations of clan symbols, guardians, or cosmological entities? And what might their presence reveal about the worldview of the Chachapoa, whose beliefs are otherwise largely hidden from us? Cuilop's placement within the landscape adds another layer of mystery. The fortress is surrounded by steep cliffs on almost all sides, making it naturally defensible and yet dramatically isolated. Approaches to the site are few, and even today, reaching it requires careful navigation of winding paths and precipitous slopes. Scholars suggest that the site's elevation and seclusion may have held symbolic meaning, placing the fortress closer to the heavens and emphasizing the power or sanctity of those who resided within. Could Kulap have been as much a spiritual statement as a military one? A mountaintop city that asserted both dominance over the terrain and communion with forces beyond the human realm. Some researchers have noted astronomical alignments in Kulap's construction. Certain walls, gateways, and structures appear to interact with sunlight at solstices or equinoxes, illuminating interior spaces in ways that suggest intentional design. If deliberate, these alignments imply a sophisticated understanding of the cosmos incorporated into daily life and ritual practice. But could Cuilop have functioned as a sacred calendar guiding ceremonies and communal activities according to celestial cycles? Or are these alignments coincidental, emerging naturally from the site's topography? The question remains open, one of many that keep the fortress shrouded in intrigue. The discovery and study of Cuilop in modern times have only deepened its aura of mystery. The site was largely forgotten for centuries, enveloped by cloud forests and difficult terrain, until early explorers and archaeologists documented its existence. Its relative isolation has helped preserve much of the stonework, yet it also means that many aspects of its history, use, and cultural significance are irretrievably lost. Oral traditions of local communities offer tantalizing hints. Stories speak of hidden treasures, spirits that guard the fortress, and ancient rituals performed on the mountaintop. While these accounts cannot be verified, they reflect the enduring power of Cuilap to capture the imagination even across centuries. Speculative theories surrounding Cuilop invite reflection. Some suggest that the fortress could have been part of a wider network of Chachapoa settlements linked by trade, ceremony, or defensive strategy. Others propose that the fortress may have had esoteric purposes, serving as a center of knowledge or spiritual practice where the elite could observe the stars, perform rituals, and maintain control over surrounding communities. While evidence is limited, the combination of monumental architecture, symbolic decoration, and remote placement fuels the sense that Cuilop was designed to impress, intimidate, and perhaps inspire reverence. Walking among the circular dwellings and climbing the stone stairways today, the visitor is struck by both the skill and the vision of the Chachapoa builders. The stone walls are remarkably preserved, and the careful alignment of structures suggests a deliberate, thoughtful design process. Every frieze, every niche, and every passage seems imbued with purpose. Yet the intentions behind them remain tantalizingly out of reach. The fortress conveys both power and secrecy, a statement of human ambition carved directly into the mountain, defying time and weather. Even after decades of study, the fortress challenges our assumptions about ancient Andean societies. What social and spiritual practices were encoded in the arrangement of dwellings and ceremonial spaces? Then how did the Chachapoa manage to construct such a massive site in an environment both difficult and remote? And perhaps most intriguingly, what messages or knowledge did they hope to preserve within these walls? Messages we can glimpse but not fully decipher. The environment surrounding Cuilop adds to the sense of wonder. Mist drifts through the cloud forest. Clouds obscure portions of the fortress, and the Andean wind carries distant sounds through the mountains. It is a landscape of isolation and grandeur, where human construction seems almost miraculous against the raw, imposing backdrop of cliffs and sky. The interplay between natural and man-made structures reinforces the mystery. The fortress is at once part of the earth, and apart from it, a bridge between human endeavour and the grandeur of the high Andes. Though perhaps the most compelling aspect of Cuilop is its persistence as a silent witness. The fortress has survived centuries of weather, conquest, and neglect, standing as a reminder of the ingenuity, ambition, and cultural complexity of the Chachapoa people. Yet it continues to pose questions that modern science cannot fully answer. The reasons for its precise construction, the full significance of its decorative motifs, and the spiritual and social functions of its interior spaces remain elusive. As the sun sets behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the elliptical walls and circular dwellings, Quayap seems almost alive, a monument of memory and mystery. It beckons us to reflect on the Chachapoa civilization, their knowledge, their beliefs, and the deliberate ways they shape the world around them. And it challenges us to consider what remains hidden, the intentions, rituals, and a wisdom encoded in stone still waiting to be deciphered by those patient enough to study, observe, and imagine the lives of those who built this fortress in the clouds. In the end, Quilop stands as a question as much as a place. How much of the human story, our knowledge, spirituality, and creativity is preserved in the stones of remote mountains, and how much continues to elude understanding quietly guarded by the clouds and cliffs of tea? Far across the Pacific, on the windswept plains and low hills of Japan's northern islands, lie formations that whisper of human ingenuity and ritual, yet remain largely mysterious to the modern eye. The Jomon stone circles, ancient rings of carefully placed boulders, some spanning tens of meters in diameter, are subtle in their appearance, yet profound in implication. From a distance, they resemble natural accumulations of rock, but as one approaches, the deliberate nature of their construction becomes unmistakable. Each stone is positioned with intention, forming circles, ovals, and complex patterns that suggest planning, measurement, and symbolic purpose. These stone circles date back between 3000 and 2500 BCE during Japan's Jin period, a time when communities were primarily hunter-gatherers, yet capable of remarkable social organization and artistic expression. The Jan people left no written records, yet their legacy endures in pottery figurines and these enigmatic circles scattered across the Toka region. Now, some sites like the Oyu and Isi-Dotai circles feature dozens of stones arranged with precise spacing, creating open central spaces that may have served communal or ceremonial functions. Standing within these circles, one senses a deliberate effort to shape not only the landscape but human experience itself. Archaeologists have long debated the purpose of the Jomon stone circles. Conventional interpretations suggest ritualistic or ceremonial use, gatherings, seasonal celebrations, or spiritual observances tied to the cycles of nature. Some circles are aligned in ways that hint at astronomical awareness, marking solstices or equinoxes as sunlight falls across stones in patterns that change with the seasons. And could these alignments reflect a sophisticated understanding of celestial movement encoded into the very landscape to guide ritual or agricultural activity? Or were they symbolic representations of cosmology, a reflection of the Jan worldview carved into stone? The construction of the circles is itself remarkable. Despite the absence of advanced tools or metal implements, the Jan carefully selected and transported sizable stones, arranging them with an apparent awareness of proportion and symmetry. In some instances, stones are stacked or leveled to precise heights, suggesting knowledge of balance and stability in design. What motivated these communities to invest such labor in structures that appear at first glance simple yet carry an air of permanence and purpose? Was it the act of creation itself, a ritual, an offering, or a communal exercise that reinforced social cohesion? Some stone circles contain additional features that deepen the mystery. Small pits, depressions, or arrangements of smaller stones within or around the main rings may have served as altars, markers, or focal points for gatherings. Artifacts such as pottery shards and tools are occasionally found within these spaces, hinting at activity beyond mere construction. Yet the exact nature of these gatherings remains unknown. Were they social, spiritual, astronomical, or something entirely different? Activities and meanings lost to millennia. Speculative interpretations have emerged over time. Some researchers propose that the circles functioned as ritual calendars, guiding communal life according to celestial and seasonal cycles. Others suggest symbolic or cosmological purposes, encoding concepts of life, death, and human interaction with the natural world. Certain alignments and patterns have even invited fringe hypotheses, proposing connections to energy fields or prehistoric knowledge that exceeded what conventional tools and understanding might suggest. While unproven, these ideas underscore the profound sense of mystery that surrounds these structures, hinting at layers of knowledge and intention that cannot be fully reconstructed. The landscape itself amplifies the sense of enigma. Many Jonestone circles occupy elevated positions overlooking plains, rivers, or valleys. The placement of each circle may have been chosen for visibility, symbolism, or spiritual resonance. Could the locations have served as markers of territory, sacred spaces for community identity, or deliberate points of observation, both of the landscape and the sky above? And what of the interaction between these circles and the daily lives of those who built them? Did they mark seasons for hunting, planting, or gathering? Or were they sites apart from ordinary life reserved for ceremonial purposes? Visiting the circles today, one is struck by their quiet persistence. Stones weathered by millennia remain largely in place, their original alignments often intact despite centuries of exposure to wind, rain, and human activity. The openness of the circles, the careful spacing, and the subtle geometric relationships create a sense of intentionality that feels almost modern in its precision. Yet there is an elusiveness here, a refusal to speak fully, a silent invitation to contemplate the minds and motivations of the builders. Even with extensive archaeological study, the German stone circles resist full interpretation. Without written records, researchers must rely on inference from artifacts, spatial arrangements, and environmental context. Every excavation reveals fragments of understanding. Pottery, hearths, or stone tools hint at ritual or communal use, yet they cannot answer questions about belief, symbolism, or the social structures encoded within the circles. What stories were told here? What experiences were meant to unfold as people gathered within these rings of stone? Some of the most compelling mysteries lie in the geometric patterns themselves. Certain circles display concentric arrangements, offset alignments, or central stones that suggest deliberate measurement and symbolic design. Were these features intended to mark celestial events, denote status within the community, or encode abstract cosmological concepts? The answers remain speculative. Yet the circles continue to speak across the millennia, challenging modern observers to consider the sophistication and creativity of a people who lived without writing, but possessed a profound sense of spatial and symbolic awareness. Local folklore and cultural memory add another layer of intrigue. Stories persist of sacred spaces, ancestral gatherings, and ritual use of the stone circles, though their origins are obscured by time. These tales, whether grounded in history or myth, reflect a persistent recognition of the stones as markers of human experience, places where the ordinary world intersects with ritual, community, and the intangible forces that shape belief. Could the circles have served as touchstones guiding spiritual practice, a social cohesion, or observation of the natural world for generations? As one stands within a German stone circle surrounded by the quiet, open landscape, it is easy to feel both grounded and hummed. The stones are at once tangible and symbolic, simple in material yet complex in intention. They invite reflection on human ingenuity, social organization, and the enduring desire to leave a mark on the world that transcends individual life. They are both a record and a riddle, offering insight while simultaneously concealing their full significance. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of the Janstone circles is their invitation to wonder. They challenge us to imagine the lives of people who built them, to consider what rituals, observations, and social structures were encoded in these arrangements, and to confront the limits of our understanding. But what did the builders hope to preserve for future generations, and what meanings have been lost to the passage of time? How much remains hidden, silently preserved in the geometry of stone and the spaces between the rocks, waiting for those who pause to observe, reflect, and questions? In the quiet of the northern Japanese plains, the Johnstone circles endure timeless and enigmatic, a testament to human creativity and the enduring mystery of civilizations that left no written record yet spoke volumes through the deliberate act of shaping their world. They remind us that even in simplicity there can be profound complexity, and that the past, though silent, can still provoke awe, contemplation, and an unending curiosity about the lives of those who came before us. In the rugged landscapes of Maharashtra, India, where cliffs rise sharply from the plains and monsoon clouds gather over jagged rock faces, there exists a series of subterranean marvels that defy ordinary comprehension. The Ellora Caves, ancient temples carved directly into volcanic basalt, stretch across more than 2 kilometers of cliff face. Their sheer scale and intricacy leave even seasoned archaeologists and travelers breathless. From a distance, the cliff appears unremarkable, a blackened wall of stone weathered by centuries of wind and rain. Yet as one approaches, the human hand becomes evident. A series of openings, arches and intricate carvings hinting at monumental spaces hidden within the mountain itself. Among these, the Kiesa Temple, Cave 16, is the crowning achievement, a structure so vast it seems almost impossible to have been excavated by hand. Carved downward from the top of the cliff, the temple descends through rock, leaving a colossal monolith standing at its centre, surrounded by courtyards, halls, shrines, and detailed sculptures of deities, animals, and mythological scenes. The scale of Kiesa is staggering. Some estimates suggest that over 200,000 tons of rock were removed to reveal the temple. Yet it is carved with an elegance and precision that appears almost effortless. Each pillar, frieze and courtyard seems deliberately designed, both structurally and symbolically, as if the temple itself embodies a cosmic order. Constructed between the 6th and 10th centuries CE by the Rashtrakuta dynasty, the Ellora complex comprises 34 caves encompassing Buddhist, Hindu and Jain traditions. And the coexistence of these diverse religious expressions within a single cliffside is remarkable, a testament to both the spiritual and social complexity of the time. Each cave is unique. Some are meditation halls adorned with serene carvings. Others are elaborate temples filled with intricate iconography. Yet what unites them is a shared mastery over stone, an ability to transform unyielding rock into sacred spaces of remarkable beauty and function. The logistics of construction are difficult to imagine. The entire complex was excavated from the top down, a method requiring not only architectural foresight, but also extraordinary planning, coordination, and labour. Workers had to remove massive quantities of stone while ensuring structural integrity, all without modern tools. How did ancient artisans calculate weight distribution, and stability, and the proportions of multi-story chambers carved into solid rock? The answers remain speculative, yet the precision of Ellora challenges assumptions about the technological capabilities of pre-modern societies. Could they have employed techniques or knowledge now lost, passed down through generations of artisans and engineers whose methods were never recorded? Within the caves, the carvings themselves are a language of devotion, power, and narrative. Deities in relief seem to emerge from the stone, their expressions animated, gestures deliberate, and forms imbued with a dynamic energy that defies the rigidity of rock. Scenes from the epics, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Buddhist Jataka tales unfold across walls and ceilings, intricately detailed yet harmoniously integrated into architectural space. But some carvings depict mythological battles and celestial beings, others depict ordinary humans and animals in precise proportion. What inspired such fidelity to narrative and form? And how did artisans maintain consistent style and symbolism across decades, even centuries of work without written guidelines or standardized tools? The Kiesa temple in particular presents a mystery of scale and intention. The temple's monolithic central shrine is surrounded by a courtyard carved directly from the rock, flanked by subsidiary shrines and sculpted figures. The spatial arrangement is both functional and symbolic, with pathways, staircases, and columns guiding movement and visual focus. Some scholars argue that the temple's layout represents a microcosm of the universe, a reflection of cosmic order and divine hierarchy in stone, and others propose that it embodies a spiritual journey, leading worshippers from outer courtyards into increasingly sacred inner sanctums. Yet despite extensive study, many of the architectural decisions remain puzzling. Why such an elaborate plan carved entirely from solid rock when freestanding structures could have achieved similar ritual functions? Ellora also presents anomalies that spark speculation. Certain chambers contain carvings that seem deliberately hidden, accessible only through narrow passages or secondary chambers. Some sculptures display unusual iconography or proportions, and a few reliefs appear almost unfinished, as if the work was intentionally paused or designed to leave interpretation open. Could these features reflect secretive spiritual knowledge accessible only to initiates or priests? Or are they practical constraints of excavation dictated by the limitations of hand tools and the hardness of basalt? The site's interweaving of different religious traditions raises additional questions. Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain caves occupy the same cliffside, sometimes adjacent, sometimes separated by mere meters. Each tradition maintains its own aesthetic and spiritual priorities, yet the overall site achieves a sense of harmony and continuity. Was this coexistence purely practical, or does it reflect a deliberate philosophy of tolerance, integration, or cosmic balance? Could the artisans have shared techniques, methods, and symbolic understanding across traditions, contributing to a collective mastery of both art and engineering that transcended individual religious affiliation? Speculative interpretations abound, and some suggest that the Ellora caves served as centers of esoteric knowledge, places where spiritual practice, astronomy, and geometry converged. Certain corridors and chambers seem to capture sound and light in precise ways, creating acoustic and visual effects that may have been integral to ritual. Others propose that the alignment of caves and sculpted figures reflects astronomical or cylindrical observation, encoding knowledge of celestial cycles in stone. While such theories are difficult to prove, they highlight the enduring mystery of human intent and capability behind creation. The environment adds to the enigmatic power of the site. Monsoon rains sweep across the plateau, wind gusts echo through the narrow passages, and sunlight shifts across carvings, revealing new patterns of shadow and relief. The interplay of natural light and rock transforms the caves throughout the day, creating an experience that seems deliberately orchestrated. Was this environmental choreography intentional, a way to enhance spiritual experience, or merely a byproduct of the cliffside location? The question lingers, unanswered, as it has for centuries. Even the unfinished or hidden elements provoke wonder. Tools, scaffolding techniques, and sequences of excavation remain largely speculative, yet the results are indisputable. A series of spaces carved from solid rock with precision, artistry, and purpose. The sheer ambition of the undertaking suggests both a sophisticated social organization and an extraordinary level of spiritual or cultural motivation. How much of this knowledge, technical, artistic, or philosophical, was lost as centuries passed, leaving only the stone itself as a witness to human ingenuity? Walking through Ellora today, the visitor is enveloped by both awe and quiet reflection. Every pillar, staircase, and carved relief speaks to human ambition, devotion, and creativity, yet also to unanswered questions. The methods of construction, the motivations behind design, the selection of motifs, and the knowledge encoded in space remain elusive. The caves are simultaneously tangible and ineffable, material and symbolic, monumental and intimate, perhaps the most haunting aspect of its persistence as a silent enigma. The cliffs stand as witnesses to centuries of devotion, labour, and imagination, yet they speak incompletely, leaving modern observers to ponder the full extent of the vision that created them. And how did artisans conceive of and execute such a monumental plan without modern engineering? How were religious, artistic, and architectural traditions integrated so seamlessly across centuries? And most importantly, what meanings remain hidden within the shadows, the carvings, and the spaces between the stones, waiting for those patient enough to observe, question, and imagine? As sunlight fades and shadows deepen in the carved halls, the Ellora caves endure as both sacred spaces and enduring mysteries. They remind us that human creativity often exceeds our expectations. That knowledge may be encoded in ways we have yet to fully comprehend, and that even the most massive enduring structures hold secrets beyond immediate perception. And as one pauses to listen to the silence of stone and wind, one cannot help but wonder how much of human ingenuity, belief, and spiritual aspiration lies quietly preserved within these subterranean temples, and what mysteries remain buried within the rock, waiting to reveal themselves only to the attentive and the curious. Beneath the murky waters of the eastern Nile Delta, where the river slows and meets the Mediterranean, lies a city long thought lost to time. Thonos Heracleion, known in Greek as Heraklion, and in Egyptian as Thonos, was once a bustling port, a gateway for trade, culture, and religion in ancient Egypt. Today, it rests silently beneath more than 30 feet of silt-laden water. Streets, temples, and colossal statues are swallowed by the sea. The first glimpses of the ruins through underwater exploration evoke a strange and haunting beauty. Stone pillars encrusted with marine life, fragments of temples rising like ghostly monoliths, and colossal statues lying prone on the riverbed as though frozen in mid-stride, guardians of a civilization that vanished beneath the waves. Thonos Heracleion was a city of immense significance during the late period of Egyptian history, serving as the primary port for trade with the Mediterranean world, particularly with the Greek and Phoenician colonies. Ancient texts speak of its bustling docks, grand temples, and wealthy merchants, describing a city that thrived on commerce, religious devotion, and strategic location. Herodotus mentions the city as a vital hub for trade and ritual, while Egyptian records highlight the presence of sanctuaries dedicated to the god Amun and other deities. Yet for centuries, scholars debated whether Thonis Heracleion had ever truly existed, and its precise location a matter of speculation, myth, and legend. The discovery of the site in 2000 by French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudiot transformed legend into reality. As diving teams explored the delta waters, they uncovered a sprawling urban landscape. Hundreds of sunken ships, stone sphinxes, giant statues of pharaohs and gods, temple columns inscribed with hieroglyphs, and even entire streets paved with stone. The scale of the city is staggering, revealing a metropolis comparable in wealth and influence to Alexandria, which would later eclipse it. Yet while many elements are understandable through historical records, the circumstances of its submersion remain a profound mystery. Geological and historical studies suggest that Thonis Heracleion gradually sank over several centuries, affected by natural events such as earthquakes, soil liquefaction, and rising sea levels. The delta itself is notoriously unstable, with shifting sediment and subsidence creating conditions in which large structures could slowly sink into the soft riverbed. Yet these explanations, though plausible, do not fully account for the city's sudden disappearance from historical memory. How did such a thriving port central to Egyptian commerce and religion vanish so completely? Was it merely the slow march of geology? Or were there more abrupt events, catastrophic floods, seismic upheaval, or even divine interpretation that sealed the city beneath the water? The underwater landscape itself evokes both awe and unease. Massive stone statues, and some nearly 10 meters tall, lie toppled and broken, their faces eroded yet still expressive. Columns and walls etched with hieroglyphs and reliefs rise intermittently from the silt, fragments of a once imposing city. Shipwrecks scattered across the riverbed suggest that maritime activity persisted even as the city sank. Yet many vessels seem abandoned abruptly, their cargo intact. Were these ships caught in a sudden disaster? Or did they represent ordinary trade halted by an inexorable natural decline? The juxtaposition of monumental architecture and scattered debris creates an uncanny scene. A city simultaneously alive in its construction and frozen in its demise. Artifacts recovered from the site reveal a sophisticated urban life. Ceramics, jewellery, coins, and everyday objects attest to a population engaged in trade, craftsmanship, and ritual. Yet some finds are puzzling. Imported Greek pottery far predating the supposed peak of Hellenic contact, inscriptions referencing pharaohs whose historical placement is uncertain, and evidence of complex ritual practices that challenge conventional timelines. Could these anomalies reflect previously unknown aspects of Mediterranean-Egyptian interaction? Or do they hint at a city whose history is more intricate than surviving texts suggest? Thus, Heracleion also presents enigmas in its religious architecture. Temples dedicated to Amun and other deities feature colossal statues, gateways, and Hyper halls, some of which now lie partially collapsed underwater. The alignment and design of these temples raise questions about ritual practice and celestial observation. Were the temples aligned with the astronomical events as seen in other ancient sites? Or were their orientations dictated purely by geography and river channels? And what role did these sacred spaces play in the daily life of a city that was both a commercial hub and a spiritual centre? The city's interaction with the Mediterranean world adds further layers of mystery. Greek historians describe Heracleion as a place where Greeks and Egyptians traded, intermarried, and conducted ceremonies together. Coins and inscriptions bearing Greek names have been recovered alongside Egyptian artifacts, suggesting a multicultural urban life. Yet, the exact nature of this intercultural exchange remains speculative. How deeply were Greek and Egyptian traditions intertwined here? Were the ceremonies purely commercial, or did they represent deeper spiritual or political collaboration? The underwater ruins provide tantalizing hints, yet no definitive answers. Speculative interpretations extend even further. Some propose that Thonis Heracleion was deliberately abandoned or ritually buried, submerged as part of religious or political practice, while others suggest it fell victim to catastrophic natural events so sudden that little record of the process survived. Tales from ancient Egypt speak of cities swallowed by the Nile or cursed by the gods, and it is tempting to imagine that such narratives may have arisen from memory of Heracleion's disappearance. Could the submersion itself have been interpreted as divine judgment, reinforcing cultural myths and influencing later Egyptian storytelling? An exploration of the site is challenging and transformative. Diving through the silt-heavy waters, archaeologists encounter columns, statues, and fragments of temples as if navigating a sunken metropolis frozen in time. Visibility is limited, and each artifact is weighed down by centuries of sediment. Yet every discovery provides both evidence and mystery. The underwater city evokes a profound sense of temporality, a civilization thriving, vanishing, and now preserved in a state between ruin and memory. What daily lives played out along these streets? Which voices, now silent, once animated temples, markets, and docks? Even after decades of excavation, many questions remain. How precisely did the city sink, and over what timeline? Were its final days marked by gradual decay, a sudden catastrophe, or both? And what does Thonis Heraclean reveal about the resilience and vulnerability of human settlements in the face of shifting landscapes and climate? The ruins provide evidence of remarkable engineering, urban planning, and artistry. Yet they also speak to the fragility of civilization, reminding us that even the mightiest ports can vanish, leaving only echoes beneath the waves. The sensory experience of the underwater site is unforgettable. Stone monuments, once vibrant in their placement along bustling streets, now lie encrusted with coral and marine life. Shadows stretch across collapsed walls, and shafts of sunlight illuminate hieroglyphs partially buried in silt. The city seems alive yet silent, present yet distant, a landscape where history, geology, and mythology intersect. Each dive becomes an encounter with time itself, where centuries collapse and a vanished world can be glimpsed in fragments of stone, pottery, and bone. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Thonis Heraclean is its persistence as a mystery. Its rediscovery has illuminated aspects of Egyptian trade, culture, and ritual. Yet, it continues to challenge our understanding of the ancient world. What social, religious, or political forces shaped this city? How did its multicultural interactions influence Mediterranean history? And most hauntingly, what remains buried beneath the silt, waiting to reveal itself, locked in sediment that has preserved yet concealed the story for millennia? As the waters of the Nile Delta ripple across the sunken streets and fallen temples, Heraclean endures as both archaeological treasure and enduring enigma. It invites reflection on human ambition, cultural exchange, and the fragile balance between civilization and nature. The city, once vibrant with commerce, ritual, and daily life, now rests beneath the river's surface, silent yet eloquent, a testament to the impermanence of human endeavours and the persistent allure of the unknown. And so the submerged ruins challenge us to imagine how many stories remain buried beneath the waters of the Nile, how much of history lies preserved yet unseen, waiting for patient eyes to uncover, interpret, and wonder at the civilizations that shaped our world, and vanished in ways that science can approach but never fully explain. Across the windswept coasts and rugged archipelagos of northern Europe, scattered along rocky promontories and desolate islands, there exist formations that seem at once simple and profound. Vast labyrinths of stone etched onto the landscape by hands long vanished, known variously as Troy towns, Troyaborgs, or stone labyrinths of Scandinavia. These structures are composed of carefully arranged boulders forming intricate patterns of spirals, loops, and interwoven paths. Viewed from above or from the imagination, their complexity is immediately striking. Yet at ground level, the labyrinths appear deceptively unassuming. Modest stones, some no taller than a foot, placed with deliberate precision in the open landscape. Their lines guide movement and thought through invisible currents of purpose. The labyrinths are found primarily along the coasts of Sweden, Finland, and parts of Russia, with the largest concentrations near the Bonian Bay and the shores of the Baltic. While some are mere meters across, and others stretch for dozens of meters, their paths snaking back and forth, sometimes forming near-perfect geometric patterns. From the air, they resemble intricate weaving in stone, yet on the ground they become spaces that can be traversed, contemplated, and experienced in ways that are difficult to capture in photographs or maps. The effect is immersive. The labyrinth is at once a puzzle, a monument, and a silent witness to human ritual. The origins of these labyrinths are ancient, yet their precise age remains uncertain. Archaeological studies suggest that many date back to the Bronze Age or early Iron Age, though some may be as late as the medieval period. Unlike monumental stone constructions elsewhere, The labyrinths offer no inscriptions, no written records to illuminate their purpose, and they were created by societies whose lives were deeply entwined with the sea, hunting, fishing, and coastal navigation, yet whose motivations for constructing such complex patterns in stone remain elusive. Were these labyrinths ceremonial spaces, practical guides, or symbolic markers? Or were they all of these things at once, functioning on levels that defy simple categorization? Traditional interpretations often link the labyrinths to maritime activity. Coastal communities may have built these stone patterns as rituals to ensure safe passage over treacherous waters, or as symbolic representations of the journey through life and death. Some labyrinths are situated near natural features such as cliffs, khors, or rocky outcrops, suggesting that location played a crucial role in their design. But could the labyrinths have been intended to honour the spirits of the sea, the wind, or the ancestors who navigated these landscapes before them? Or were they meant as offerings, a deliberate shaping of the environment to influence forces beyond human understanding? The construction of the labyrinths is deceptively simple, yet profound in its implication. Stones were gathered locally, carefully arranged into continuous lines that form spirals, branching paths, or interconnected loops. There is a rhythm to their design, the spacing of the stones, the curvature of the paths, the orientation relative to the coastline or horizon, all suggest a considered, deliberate effort. Some labyrinths are aligned with the rising or setting sun at solstices or equinoxes, hinting at an astronomical awareness intertwined with ritual practice. Could these alignments have served as a calendar guiding seasonal ceremonies, fishing expeditions, or communal gatherings? Or were they symbolic, encoding cosmological knowledge within the very ground beneath one's feet? Walking into a labyrinth is to enter a space that is simultaneously physical and abstract. Each step along the winding path requires attention, a conscious engagement with direction, space, and memory. Unlike hedge mazes or modern puzzle labyrinths, these stone patterns do not feature a clear entrance or exit in all cases. Some end in dead ends, some loop endlessly, and others converge in open circles or central points that may have served as focal points for ritual or meditation. Were these central points altars, markers of spiritual focus, or simply places to pause and contemplate? The answer remains uncertain, yet the experience of movement through the labyrinth is unmistakably intentional. A choreography of stone, body, and thought. Some labyrinths exhibit remarkable precision in their geometry. The stones are arranged in repeating patterns with spiral loops reflecting symmetry and proportion that seem to echo mathematical understanding. Certain labyrinths mirror one another across regions, suggesting the transmission of knowledge and design principles over considerable distances. How was such consistency maintained across generations without written language or formal architectural training? Did knowledge travel along trade routes and maritime networks carried by artisans, hunters, or ritual specialists? The labyrinths hint at a culture capable of complex planning, observation, and symbolism, yet the full story is inaccessible to us. So speculation extends to the ritualistic and spiritual dimensions of the labyrinths. Some researchers suggest that they were used in rites of passage, ceremonies marking transitions in life or status, or itinerary practices connected to the ancestors. Evidence from nearby burial sites supports the notion that these labyrinths were embedded in the cultural and spiritual landscape. Yet no definitive ritual artifacts have been found within the labyrinths themselves. Could the act of walking, circling, and navigating the paths have been the ritual itself? A performative meditation designed to align participants with the natural world and the cosmos, or the unseen spirits? Other interpretations focus on social and communal functions. The labyrinths may have served as gathering spaces, locations where coastal communities met for trade, negotiation, and/or seasonal festivals. Their placement along the shoreline suggested that visibility from the sea could have been important either to guide returning fishers or as symbolic markers for travellers. Could these stone arrangements have been multifaceted tools, ritual, social, and practical, blending utility with meaning in ways that modern observers struggle to comprehend? The labyrinths also possess a haunting aesthetic. Weathered by centuries of wind, rain, and frost, the stones are often covered with lichen, moss, or salt spray, blending seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. Walking along the paths, one senses both antiquity and impermanence. The labyrinths are durable yet ephemeral, shaped by human intent but eroded by nature. The interplay of permanence and transience mirrors the broader mystery of their existence. They have survived the passage of centuries, yet their purpose, their meaning, and the intentions of their builders remain partially obscured. Some labyrinths feature anomalies that challenge straightforward explanations. Occasionally, stones appear deliberately misplaced or isolated from the main pattern, suggesting symbolic intention beyond structural necessity. In other instances, labyrinths overlay older patterns, hinting at centuries of modification, reinterpretation, and ritual adaptation. Could these changes reflect shifts in belief systems, migrations of populations, or evolving cosmological understanding? Or were they practical adjustments responding to environmental changes and the shifting demands of community life? The enduring appeal of the labyrinths lies in their enigmatic simplicity. They are neither tombs nor temples in the conventional sense, yet they command attention and evoke contemplation. The act of engaging with the labyrinth, tracing its paths, observing its geometry, considering its alignment is a form of dialogue across millennia, connecting the modern observer with human intention in ways that transcend written history. They are subtle yet profound, enduring markers of a culture that understood the power of space, movement, and symbol. Despite decades of study, much about the labyrinths remains unresolved. How were they constructed, maintained, and integrated into daily life? What specific rituals, ceremonies, or practical functions did they serve? And why did this particular form, stone arranged in complex spirals and loops, emerge repeatedly across coastal Scandinavia, yet disappear elsewhere, leaving no direct textual or pictorial record? The labyrinths seem designed to provoke curiosity, to invite exploration, and to resist easy interpretation. Modern visitors to the labyrinths are enveloped in an experience that is simultaneously contemplative and disorienting. The wind from the sea carries sounds across stone and sand, altering perception of distance and space. Each turn, each loop reveals subtle changes in perspective, encouraging a sense of reflection and immersion. In this way, the labyrinths are more than stone on stone. They are landscapes of thought crafted to shape perception and awareness. Perhaps the most compelling mystery is the universality of the labyrinth motif. From Scandinavia to the Mediterranean, from Minoan to the British Isles, labyrinths appear repeatedly in human history, often linked to ritual, myth, and spiritual practice. Why did this form recur, appearing independently across cultures separated by geography and time? Do the Scandinavian labyrinths belong to this broader phenomenon, echoing universal concerns with journey, transition, and the human engagement with the unknown? Or do they represent a unique expression of the particular societies that built them, reflecting local needs, beliefs, and imagination? As twilight descends on the Scandinavian coast, the stone labyrinths take on an almost otherworldly presence. Shadows stretch across the spirals and loops, and the wind whispers across the rocks, as if the labyrinth itself is speaking in a language lost to time. Each stone, each curve, each path is a fragment of human thought, action, and intention, preserved yet enigmatic. The labyrinths endure as silent witnesses, so inviting us to contemplate the lives, beliefs, and aspirations of those who built them, and to wonder about the knowledge, rituals, and mysteries that remain hidden within these simple yet profound arrangements. In the end, the stone labyrinths of Scandinavia remind us that human creativity is often deliberate yet elusive, profound yet subtle. They encourage us to ask how much of our past, our beliefs, practices, and understanding of the natural and spiritual worlds remains embedded in forms that are at once familiar and mysterious. What secrets lie in the spaces between stones, in the wind across the coastline, and in the paths that twist and loop under our feet, waiting for the patient and curious to explore, reflect, and imagine?